what comes up on You Are Live. We are about 30 seconds back on from uh, from what shows up on YouTube.
Okay.
There, there we go. So we're live now and everything. Hey, hello, Mgtows. Hey, go your own way. Oops, I'm looking wrong hand. Go your own way. Go your own way, and all your sins from the past are forgiven. Today we're here with misanthropic zombie, and we're going to talk a little bit about logic. We're going to talk a little about Mgtow. We're going to talk about the current shape of Mgtow and everything, and we're going to talk a little bit about probably everything today. And I wanted to start off with kind of what my thoughts were about what happens to you as a man when you start out. And I was thinking a lot about Pascal's wager. It's a form of an argument that's from adverse consequences. If you believe in God, you won't get thrown in a lake of fire, but that goes into negation to a disbelief in God, and you'll get thrown in this metaphysical lake of fire. Logic does certain things with that. First of all, there's what we call an apologetic presupposition in that. Who's bringing that argument to me? There's someone coming to me, and if imagine yourself as a non-contacted person, and someone walks up to you and he says, "Hey, man, did you see that lake of fire that this God is going to throw you in? Let me explain." You would think he was crazy. So that's a presupposition that these people are bringing to you. This plays out a lot in life. It pays with paying taxes. If you pay your taxes, you won't go to jail. There's two things that happen in the argument. In that argument, there's a corporeal. In the other argument with Pascal's wager, there's an incorporeal, or a God throwing you into a lake of fire that's incorporeal. It's not real. It's something that relies on belief. There's a lot of different beliefs in this world. Most of the time, these beliefs come in the shape of negation, like they said. If you don't believe in this, this will happen. There will be some consequences, and that this plays out in life in quite a few ways, and it plays out in Mgtow more than you think. I would give another example of the mafia, the old-fashioned mafia taking money from store owners for protection. And the mafia comes in and they say, "Hey, there's all this crime out here, and we can protect you against this metaphysical crime out here that's everywhere. But you and I both know that the only protection you need is from the mafia guy, because he's getting the money, he's offering the protection, and there's not really no one that was going to come in." And that's how it works out in life too, and it works out in Mgtow, and it works out with that wager. Someone brought something to the party there. Someone brought ideas to the party, and they're trying to feed you ideas. Now, let's look at that in the form of Mgtow. Mgtow, you get all this bad information from tradcons at the beginning. They're the same people that made up the Pascal's wager. You're going to get thrown in a lake of fire. If you don't get married, there's going to be some adverse consequences. If you don't follow all these instructions in life, there's going to be some adverse consequences. But the only people you like the mafia thing, and like Pascal's wager, the only people that you should distrust is people telling you that there's some adverse consequences that are going to come from this, because those are the people that are bringing the adverse consequences. We know them by blue pill people. This argument plays out in the form is, if you're a single guy and you're not like everybody else at your job, and there's slight, what do you call those things where there's slight biases in works. They're going to give the guys that are married, the first raises. The guys that are single and not believing in the program, they're going to get passed over. A lot of times that'll work out differently, but in life, in your community, people are going to look down on you, and they're going to make things happen to you. They're going to make things happen to you just because you're not following the instructions, the basic instructions for life. Go to school, go to college, get married, have kids, fight in the army, believe in God, and then somehow this thing was going to work out perfectly, which guys like me and guys like Zombie know that man, most of the time those things don't work out perfectly, and there was just someone lying to you at the beginning of that. So right about now, I want to introduce Misanthropic Zombie, and he can share what he thinks about this. Hey, Zombie.
Hey, what's up?
Oh, nothing complex. It's a complex idea, I know, but we see it play out in life, and we're told to do things a certain way, and it doesn't work out. And then they go, oh man, it was something you did. You didn't try hard enough. You did something wrong. And there's always in these logic things that you did something wrong, like everybody else did it right. And it's just all these guys that these 70-80% of guys that are getting divorced, these 70 that are getting raked over the coals, they believed in something that was told to them, and somehow the adverse consequences came anyways.
Well, it's interesting you brought it up. So, in the way that you just did, because right now, so I do a lot of freelance work, but right now I also have like a normal sort of gig. And I won't get too into it, but it's I'll give you this. It's an auto part delivery thing, that kind of thing. Very simple gig, easy as cake. My only problem with the job is the boss. The boss is a female. And my only problem with this particular female is not because she's a female, because here's the deal. Coming from supreme misogynist, I do think at sometimes some women can fall into a position and not be a complete cunt about it. Like, they're all right as bosses, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This one, no, she's total cunt. And this is the main reason why. For no other reason that she has this knack for asking a question in the exact same way, the exact same tone, the exact same style. She'll ask a regular question or a rhetorical question. Mm-hmm. And when you start to answer it, she'll cut you off, whether it's rhetorical or an actual question. And so you begin to realize that's a motive. There's a power thing. She's not actually wanting information from you. Mm-hmm. She's wanting to tell you what the information should be.
Yeah. She's going to give the answer after, and she doesn't care what you think.
And I think that kind of relates to the subject, right? So you fall in line, and you better fucking rack your brain on how to ask a question, even when it's pertinent. Like, we're not talking about like lofty ideas right now. We're talking about like, very day-to-day operation in a job format kind of ideas. And even then, in that format, like, we see this sort of like, hey, you have a question, so ask me a question, but if you don't ask it properly, you're fucked. And if you ask it properly, you're fucked. So it's the same idea as like, the mafia is like, hey, you better pay up, because this is a dangerous neighborhood, because we're here and we will be dangerous toward you.
Yeah, so they're the only dangerous party. And in that sense, she's the dangerous. She will be the one that will bring up the adverse consequences. So the presupposition is always just listen to me, do what I want. There's an authority figure here that's now in the room, and I will make your life, I will spin this whole thing so it won't seem like I'm the one. It'll seem like you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah. And as a person, wanting just with my worth ethic involved with that is like, well, I want to do a good job.
Yeah, you want
it kind of, it's almost irrelevant what the job might be, right? So like, and I have a lot of I'm older, so when you get older and you do a lot of various jobs, you learn, you kind of have like a mental alchemy. Like, even if it's not the best job in the world, something you love to do, whatever, you find ways to trick yourself into doing it. Because at the end of the day, you're getting paid for it, and you want to see like a bigger vision of what you're doing, and that it matters, and this, that, and the third. Like, and you should do that because it'll affect your attitude in the long run anyway. So you do all that, and you're still gonna run into outside external fuckery and bullshit. Like, and that's what I got. And here's the deal. So every day that I go in, I choose to tolerate a certain amount of shit that I know is going to come from this person. Mm-hmm. And sometimes this person is gone and everything runs smoothly. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
So it's almost to say, like, with the mafia analogy is like, hey, the mafia didn't show up today. They didn't break my balls.
Right.
And nothing bad happened.
Nothing bad happened. Yeah. And that's in every country, I said, in every company. I thought being as old as I am, I've seen a lot of companies run and everything, a lot of different kinds, but the best companies were turnkey companies where an employee walked through the door in the morning. The boss didn't have to show up. He unlocked the door. The rest of the employees filed to their jobs, got a cup of coffee, started up their machines, and no one had to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
And there was no pressure. The boss had it so down that he's like, he comes in and he's like, oh, great, everything's running fine. Now, if there's things to figure out, if chains are broken or there's some entropy that happened in the system, then he fixes it and everything continues to run. And that's his job, the managerial position. He can get outside forces to come in and fix that problem, that why things aren't running and smoothly. But as for the employees go, you never even have to talk to them. They just do what they're supposed to do every single morning. And that's a well-tuned company. A lot of companies don't have that. And there's a thing in America now about authoritarianism. And people need to have that authoritarianism now. And they don't also do the presuppositions with that. We used to talk, I think we talked about this one time. People put stops in front of you. There's stops. And then you got to stop and give them the answer to why this is going like this. And if it's not their answer, that's when it leads back to remember the presupposition. You're supposed to believe this.
Well, I mean, I think I know this. For, like, the personality type, whether you want to get into psychology, whatever, that personality type is very common and more common with women, but still common with men. And what I mean is that the personality type is that, like, whatever avenue of authority, whether perceived or actualized it might be, they will not only use it, but they're going to abuse it. They're going to extend it. They're going to push the limits as a child would. Like, hey, I found something new. I'm going to push the limits, and they'll get away with it as much as they can. And that's part of their culture now. It's like there's nothing that, especially in the context of an employer-employee, they can do. Yeah. And they know that. It's not that they're commanding respect for doing, like, and being admired for doing a good job, or like, hey, I did this to get here. None of that old school shit applies. It's just like, I'm in this position and you default to me, period.
Right. That's sort of a megalomaniac culture. I noticed this in the 90s. There's sort of, they came on this megalomaniac culture. There's people that just needed to they just needed to be in charge. They needed to be, like, honored for that. And there was this narcissism that goes along with that. And if you don't feed that, they'll make life bad on you.
Yeah. And it's fucking weird. And it's getting to the point where it's hard to even, I think we can diagnose it.
Yeah.
Mostly, but not precisely. Because there's, like, some tidbits here and there that don't make sense. Yeah. We're not quite sure where they came from. Like that's when we get into the word, the wishy-washy language of, like, sociology and psychology, and we bring all these worlds together to try to paint a picture of the world that makes sense as to why these phenomena are happening with people. And this is not, like, lofty shit, like, beyond us. Like, right. I'm talking about everyday interactions with people you might work with, family, friends, whatever. And shit's just getting weird. It's getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, so outside of logic now. And that's why I do these, these Anzors or not. And I tell you, I preach them all the time. Philosophy, Mgtow gives us a good philosophy to work, but there's a lot of, even in Mgtow, we were talking about this earlier, we see a lot of this surface value, what we call political analyst stuff in Mgtow, where people just read the articles in the paper and then they relate that to the Mgtow. And Mgtow is more about fixing yourself, doing these things, being able to spot in life in every little instance where your Mgtow comes in, your Mgtow philosophy comes in, and it saves you. Anytime you get into these little things where you can identify, it took me a long time to identify what path. I would hear Pascal's rager, and it would sound sensible to me for a lot of my life. And then one morning I just woke up and I said, well, he's feeding a presupposition, and the presupposition in itself is a Platoistic argument. And if I didn't know that, then I would go along. It was one of those traps. It's a trap argument is what it is. He's already got you trapped in that argument. And then at the end he says, well, just believe in God. It doesn't cost you nothing.
Well, and that's interesting because...
Yeah, it does cost you.
It does. Whether it's the old school format of like actual God, or the more...
The new modern...
The new school, here's the deal. Like, so in the absence of God, what are most people sort of coveting or worshiping, whether they know it or not?
Right.
And so if we can identify what that is, then the Pascal argument still stands.
Yeah. And what is it that most men worship nowadays? The V?
See, I don't know. Like, well, no, I'm so woke about fucking man issues. I don't know how to answer that. But I suppose it would be, it would just be female attention. You know, it would.
Yeah, the
because it's more scarce than it was, and the value of that attention is less than it was, whether they realize it or not. So I don't know. There's some goofiness happening there. So like I think even blue pill sort of dudes are still fiending for a form of attention, but even when they get it, like it's lacking, and they're like scratching their head and being like, okay,
yeah, even when they get it in this society nowadays where reciprocal altruism and reciprocity doesn't get fulfilled anymore.
Yeah, it is like, I mean, only the dummy of dummies just goes through that and be like, okay, and like you're getting nothing back, and
back. The juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah, and it's at the point where like even womanizers are dissatisfied with the amount of fucking vanity and shallowness in their encounters. It really is to that point, and that's funny because like as a womanizer, all you care about is just sort of getting the mind and body of a woman temporarily and moving on. Right. But that's not even good anymore. So like when the so-called players are not happy no more, something's wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that PUA and that stuff is an ultimate absurdity in life, because you're doing something to get something and then you're throwing it away. You're doing something to get something and you're throwing it away. So that's a reciprocal absurdity. And you keep doing it, and then usually what happens, well, we can look at Neil Strauss. He ended up getting married and divorced and pays child support now. All the things we say that was going to happen happened to Neil Strauss. And he won't come up and go, oh, I was so wrong, because he still wants to sell his books. We can see that in a lot of guys. And it always ends up in that marriage thing where they applied this thing and then it turned into such an absurdity, and it's a cognitive dissonance. I know the human mind and the duality in the human mind, or Descartesism, duality, stuff like that. And that goes deep, and I try not to hurl that on guys right away. But there's a duality in males too, that even when, like I often say, when confronted with this unfriendly observation that they were wrong, they refuse to admit it. There's a bias in there. And the PUA never worked out. Camus says that the PUA was the Don Juan. They didn't have the PUA lingo back then. They had what was called the Don Juan. And if these guys think that was new, Don Juan was around forever, Don Juan was doing that thing forever, but even in his story, there's this ending that there's an absurd ending in there, isn't there?
Well, absolutely, and there's actually a bridge point between like these old philosophers, and they may have delved or mentioned things as it relates between the genders, and then all the new gender bullshit. Yeah. And one thing is a fact. A lot of dudes start default just sort of dudes, and most dudes are like sort of kind, getting their way in the world. They want to give to the world. They want to find their place, this, that, and the third. Like this is the default human male.
Right.
And then as far in the context of women, one of the first things he realizes by observing what's happening around him is that, like, hey, I've been really nice to women and it hasn't gotten me anywhere. And then some dudes, in the privilege of looking a certain way, maybe a certain status, they had the same struggle, but they have the option, and the option is absurd. Well, what if I'm an asshole? Like my friend, he had this fine girl he was an asshole to, and it worked. I'm going to try that, and then they yield some success, short-term success, mind you, but they yield success. And they can, and it can be replicated. It's almost like a scientific model. Like, if I'm sort of a jerk, standoffish, this, that, and the third with chicks, I'm going to get more. It's a fact. And that is I think that's one of the first absurdities the common person, the common male ever encounters. And they encounter it as young as like 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And that's a jump point to the rest of fucking reality.
The rest of,
because
if you're going to go red pill, or what we call Mgtow here, and or even men's rights or everything, there's a lot more steps after that. I mean, that, and some guys gets caught on that surface value title headline. They become
well, I think the first thing is, like, so that's the absurdity, but what to do with the absurdity is all the important thing. And there's no guidance. Like, for the last 50, 60, 70 years, there's nothing in mainstream society that would tell you, like, okay, well, yeah, you're right. When women say they want nice guys, they're bullshit. And so when you're an asshole, you will yield more success. However, it's always short term, and it's chain linked to one failure to another, as far as like the more meaningful things, intimacy. If you're only after vagina, that's great. However, you should be logical about that. Only being after that exposes yourself to disease and drama, because even though you're temporarily in a woman's life, you risk yourself being a target in her life.
Right.
There's no it could be 2 minutes, 2 years, or 20 years.
Right.
You're going to be a target at some point because of proximity. So, like, none of these things come up in the like the Don Juan womanizer PUA thing. And the risks are always minimalized. In fact, sometimes it will say, if you don't know how to check a bitch right, you deserve to go to jail. I've heard this sentiment before.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to perfectly womanize, you deserve to be punished. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah. Now the PUAs will leave guys at the whims of consequence after that, and they don't have an answer. And it's the same Pascal's wager. If you didn't do it right, then there will be consequences after. Like, I have a friend I just talked to yesterday. He comes over for a little bit of support once in a while, and he slept with a girl once in back of his shed, and it wasn't even sleep. It was, he had sex with a girl once in bed. Now he has a kid, and we all those MGTOWs. We don't see that consequence when we first come into Mgtow. And all of us start out at the same place. We all start out as like these PUAs, I'm going to do the college frat boy thing, which is PUA. I'm just going to, duck and jive and try to avoid the bad consequences. And then just, because I thought that was important in my life, and we grew. But that's what we're talking about here. Spiritual growth, human growth, mental growth. And then I had to come up with a philosophy that, I could live with this skin for the rest of my life. And Mgtow was that philosophy. It keeps me safe from a lot more. And it keeps me safe from those consequences too. It keeps me safe from myself, but that took a little introspection, a lot of introspection in some cases. And it took me looking into my faults, and once I realized that I had a lot of faults that in the PUA was some, and what I was thinking, how I think about other people, and there was a lot of faults I corrected. And then we talked about it earlier, the nihilism, the existentialism, the deconstruction. Everybody calls it a different word when they come into the red pill. The red pill is simply any one of those philosophies you choose. That's a modern philosophy. That's a post, say, 1950 philosophy, from Nietzsche to Descartes to Camus. They're all, the existentialism is the newest. They all work the same way. You question your universe out there. You question the things that you've been told, and you remove a lot of that stuff off. Descartes uses a table, a metaphysical table, and say, I have all these things that I believe, and I take them all off. And then I get skepticism. I become a nihilist. I become an existentialist or whatever. And I say, no, that stuff is no longer true. But there's work to be done after that. And that's Mgtow too. We have a philosophy, and like any philosophy, you don't stop at step one.
Well, I mean, I think the tricky thing, and I can tell you this is only personal, like as far as like Mgtow, one of the ways that I got into it is because I kind of stepped into this, my own realization, my own personal, the origin of my own philosophy was this, like, I'm really unhappy and unsatisfied. And then one time I tried this one thing. This is an incredible fucking idea. I just started to like sit the fuck down and take accountability for my own actions, whether they were like past or present, right? You can't really, maybe future, I guess, if you want to do that. But like, I just sat down and be like, okay, well, I'm probably in this miserable situation because of my choices. Right. And that was the first thing. And then around that time, when I was already kind of introspecting on that level, I got hit with Mgtow. And fortunately, the Mgtow information and people that I talked to, the men, were totally on point with that. And they were relentless. So like, if I did confide something, and like, yeah, you should introspect that motherfucker. There was no sugarcoating. It wasn't like going to a shrink. We're like, well, what do you feel about it? It was like, no, you should check yourself. That was a poor decision, and think about how not to do it again. And think about why you did it in the first place, this, that, and the third, right? That's the kind of feedback I got. But here's the thing. I was already primed for it because I was at that level. Like, I was like, self-responsibility seems like a good thing. I've lacked it most of my life. I'm going to try this thing. And then, Mgtow. And that's interesting. So there's a chicken and egg thing there. Right. But
you have to do that look into yourself, which most of us would. That's the red pill. That's what they talk about, that look. What is I know that I know there's things wrong, but the only thing in the world I can fix is me. I could my attitude towards the world, and it's going to have to fit the world too. It can't be some bizarre scheme.
Well, you have a chance to fix it, because like, if one of your problems is like an addiction to blaming everything else,
right?
That's a really big problem. Like if what if you are the sort of person that's addicted to blaming everything external to who and what you are? You have a almost unsurmountable problem. Right. And can philosophy or even something like Mgtow correct that? Like, is there a way that you can change your worldview to correct that? Is your worldview even correctable?
Yeah.
Or alterable, So
sociopathical view on the world, or a very libertine world view and everything. Philosophy in itself has become psychology too. You can use that same methods. I just don't read Nietzsche, and I just don't read Camus. I like those things because it leaves room for me to, grow with my own ideas. But there's also Jung, and there's also Freud, and there's also Adler, and there's also these guys that really tell you how to get. But basically in life, Mgtow is a support system. And in your real life, if you've got an addiction and you're doing bad, I would tell you to go see a support system that would help you with that particular addiction, whether it be a sex addiction, which most of these guys really have. That's a sex addiction. Go see a psychiatrist. It's basically, most countries you can do this, and tell them, be honest with them. Say, man, I'm struggling with this alcohol addiction, and I don't know what's making me unhappy. And you got to kick that mule in the ass, because if that's the thing that's holding them. They say with every addiction, it's not really the addiction. It's never the sex. It's never the drugs. It's never the alcohol. It's always the problem before that makes you do that. It's like, what was I unhappy with? That's the thing you have to get in touch with. That's where the whole introspection thing is. What was I doing, or what did I do in the past, or what am I guilty about, or do I have a father figure thing going on, or do I have a mother? My mother was this, my father was this. I didn't get that pony when I was fucking 14. My dad neglected me. Those things, we clear those things up in these outside, with the outside resources that that's available to us. And those are things that Mgtow can't really help with. Mgtow can give you once you get there where you're working on yourself and you're willing to do those deep dives into your psyche and say, man, was I a simp? Am I simping too hard? Am I trying this? Am I a beggar? Was I a white knight in that situation? We give terms so you can identify easily these actions that you have and you do that would lead you into servitude.
Yeah.
So Mgtow is not the end all cure all to everything, but in here it's that same support system where
I think you do have to have a semblance of dignity, or at least trying to be, hey, I have demonstrated I have no dignity and I want some. At least at that point, you would be receptive to some self-improvement at any point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like there are human beings that are like, they have no dignity. And I think a lack of dignity goes back to the point where you would blame everything outside of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
At all.
See them in certain ways. They can't be Mgtows. They have a certain lack of dignity to them. Being a Mgtow comes with stoicism. It comes in, I don't talk about certain things anymore. I don't, the girls become invaluable. The girls become not so valuable. It's like, I don't put that. There's a lot of things that, like the way I said it, whatever I can't talk about or around, if I enter a party, if I enter a space with a lot of people, my aunt's over there, my brother's over there, my father's over there, and what would I talk about in them situations? What should I not talk about? And that's sort of the Mgtow. It's like we get these it's just about being stoic about how you present yourself sometimes, and them are the things you have to live with in this society. But and there are certain rules to it and everything. I know society throws rules where we can't be too libertine. That stuff bothers me with the dowels and the guys talking about it all the time. That's very, very libertine. That's the Marquis de Sade sort of stuff. But Mgtow gives us a format, at least. A lot of programs will give you that format. I mean, if you're an alcoholic, go to AA. They'll give you the same format. But they're going to ask you to, believe in some entity bigger than you that you can rely on in times of trouble, which will never show up. And it's what's his name's Penn's milk jug. Either will happen, it won't happen, or it might happen. If you're waiting on that entity to show up, it will. It could happen. And that's always an if in life. Everything's iffy and mighty. It's might and ifs and mights and buts and all those things. But there's more possibility that won't happen, and you'll end up waiting for a lifetime for that to happen. Missing throw up. I'll take this time to say hello to everyone. Hello, Warrior. Hello, Trans Gamer. Hello, Thor. The Arms of Thor. Hello, Garchamp and Eric. Hello, Eric, my friend Erickson, and let me see, CJ and Mike and Ancient Lightning and all the guys that showed up today. Hello, man. I don't get a chance to type in there, and I just want to say hello to everybody that did show up today. And we're talking about the Mgtow philosophy, and basically how the Mgtow philosophy, how your more mature, your Stoic philosophy transcends out into this world, and you become that. Well, I always say it's that man above reproach thing, where I'm not going to get Me Too'd because I don't do those things. I'm not going to get accusations because it would just be ridiculous to throw some kind of accusation. Everybody would laugh about it, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Like, I actually have an example from today of like the benefit of Stoicism.
Yeah.
In two ways, like from my perspective and from my old perspective, because I'm still very aware of how I used to would respond to certain stimuli, and that's what it is, by the way, stimuli. So today, I was in a situation where a female at work got super close within kissing range, and her excuse is like, hold up, give me a minute. I saw something and I want to see if I can do it with you. And she started tangling my hoodie drawstrings, right? And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna like shove her back because that would be bad and whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't have a rapport like that with her where she should get in that close, but whatever, let it ride. And so she fumbles, and then suddenly, like it's uncomfortable because it's within kissing range, and this is 2020, and she's a woman at work, right? So it's mildly uncomfortable. Also, I know she's she overweight single mom with all this other stuff.
The intentions there.
And then she's sort of like, oh, I can't figure it out. Never mind. And I'm like, oh my God, this bitch. And then she backs away.
But
and then
harassment, isn't that? That's the same thing they would accuse you if you came up.
Yeah, well, no, think about it. Like the reverse is unthinkable. Like, here's the deal. Like a woman wearing a hoodie, her drawstrings rests on her breast.
Yeah.
To even get a hold of the drawstrings means to touch, or at least lightly breeze upon the breast. Like that, you're done. You're fucking gone. You know what I mean?
But they do.
So, but that's not the point that I want to bring up. The point I want to bring up is that this same woman, I haven't been at this job long, and when I came in there, apparently she wasn't there long either. Like a few weeks before me, but like within 2 days of having to work side by side with this girl, I know everything about her life.
Right.
I know that she's bipolar because she talks about it. I know about, she missed that 1 or 2 hours of work because she was at the doctor's getting new bipolar meds. I know her boyfriend might be a schizophrenic. Like what? I should know all these things within a couple days of working with her. That's what an aspect of Stoicism is. Like, women don't have it.
Women don't.
They're uncouth to the point. Here's the deal. When you're a simp, you look at these things as ways to get in to fuck her. But when you're not a simp, you just look at how pathetic that woman actually is. And that's the difference.
Yeah, it's like there's an over dramatization in Hollywood. It's like a man walks up and he's like, I have a PTSD. I killed a man in Nam. And it's like, I don't need to know that. You're scaring me. But in the same way they do that to us, it's like, I'm bipolar. I got this. There's a possibility I'll go off on you someday. And if I have a knife around, just be aware. It's like,
and it's interesting because and you have that in mind, like the nature and like the flow of work, as most jobs, but like the flow of work is like, these are little talking conversations that last 2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
While we're doing our own working things. And so there's something fundamentally different about the kind of woman that would tell you these things within those 3 unsolicited.
Yeah.
I'm not asking like, hey, what's going on in your home? Do you got any mental illness problems? Like it just gushes forth. And you're like, and here's the deal. I'm probably the asshole. And this is the fucked up part. I'm probably the asshole because when these things are told to me, I'm like, okay, yeah. But there are other men she has told this to that react very differently. They're like, oh, really, girl? Because whether they do it consciously or unconsciously, they're like, oh, you're in distress. Okay, so you're bipolar. I need to help you and also fuck you. Sort of thing.
Runs with benefits now, and I can work my way in here where I can be an emotional tampon if I get the correct response, and I'll sit there and listen to their bullshit, and that's what she's making. She's making you into an emotional tampon, and then, but a lot of guys would take advantage of that. That's the PUA. Would you? Oh, there's a good one. She's vulnerable.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing, because those that don't and show less interest, she keeps coming back. Like,
Yeah, she keeps it. Yeah, you got the Stoic.
so this will be an ongoing challenge for me, and I've been removed from like the normal workforce for a great many years. So like this little part-time job I have is very interesting because it's profoundly interesting. But you know what? It's not. I'm not. I have no hate. I'm not even begrudgingly. Like I work, in this co-ed environment, and I'm not miserable, but I'm aware. So there are things, going back to Camus, I think, are me best of all.
Yeah.
The absurdity of it is just like I have to hide myself from busting up laughing sometimes, because I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
Oh,
If this is real life.
right. And if you get real on this thing, and it could, you just have to do those things. And we do these things a lot. I used to explain it by, I walk into the store and every morning get my cup of coffee, at the local convenient. And I'm how you doing, Joe? And I just say, yes, I'm doing great. And really deep down inside, there's a whole bunch of stuff I would just like to share at that moment, why life sucks. But we all lie. And that's the thing you have to do is in that situation. But that in itself goes back to the original argument of the things I have to tell myself to just make it through this world. The little lies I have to, and the lies that sometimes are expected of me to tell. Those lies of I'm great. Every morning, everybody does this twice, three, 4, 5 times.
What I'm struggling with now is like trying to figure out is that the work of being social? And if you have to work around people, that's a social endeavor. So like,
right.
Is that the labor? So like, here's the deal. Like, I can totally wrap my head around when you put massive amount of thought or physical energy into a task for work.
Right.
And you try to get to produce something. And if it goes wrong, you either get frustrated with yourself or the materials or the tools, something, right?
Well, yeah, there's a restriction in here at some point, and the difference between modernism and postmodernism is the SJW and the what Rawls would call social justice in this. And you answer those questions the way social justice warriors want you to answer those questions. You never share too much and you never go overboard. And like she was doing, that was a violation of social justice, adjusting your string on your hoodie. She was in your space and everything. And that's what so in this postmodern world that we live in, I was going to bring it up earlier, but I forgot about it. With the modern philosopher, he's restricted, isn't he? He's automatically restricted in the sense of postmodernism to social justice rules. And
so, I mean,
can't say.
As a philosopher, I can tell you, like, if she was in the history of my type, or even my present type, which is non-existent basically, because she doesn't exist. But if she met the type and she did the same thing, would it have made a difference in my comfort level? Here's the deal. The first and foremost is like, I know I probably felt as violated as a woman could have, and could have done something about it, like just mildly, temporarily uncomfortable. That's what goes for violation now, right? So like, no big deal.
You could have tested.
No big deal to a grown ass man. Like, this is not gonna fuck my day up. I was mildly cringed for like 2 minutes of my day. Not a big fucking deal.
No,
but
in the reverse, she could have tested the system and seen that, he said.
And that's where the absurdity comes from. If we lived in a different world where neither one would have been a big deal,
right,
it wouldn't have been a big deal. Like, men are more understanding in situations like this. She was letting you know that she was interested in a very kind of uncomfortable way. And so here's the deal. Like, I'm even at that level, knowing, kind of observing her with like the other coworkers, because like she's the only female other than the boss.
Yeah.
By the way, interesting. And it's all dudes, and a lot of these dudes never got the PC message, by the way. So she is among that, and whatever. So either disaster or nobody cares. But what I found interesting is like so that's how I took it. Like, oh, that's her nature. She's kind of like, the interesting thing about like flirtatious women that red pill men should know is that like, is it quite innocent? I don't know. subconsciously they're just trying to play the field. They're trying to get the hooks in everybody as much as possible.
They're playing all the field. That's sexual Christmas. They want all
exactly
to buy into. They want this guy to compete with this guy to be the provider. He'll come over, he'll provide this guy provides the emotional support, whatever she was telling you.
And that should humble you. Like that should humble you in the context of such interactions, and make you take it less personally. Like, all right, no, this bitch is out of her mind. Like, so I'm good. And you move on with your day. But here's the deal: like, women couldn't do this. Like, what if a woman was in the context of working with all of the men, and all the men were flirtatious, but decent people, right? And all the men flirted with her. She would probably feel violated by all the ugly ones,
right? And
okay with the better ones, right?
And if she can get a resource, we see this all the time in Me Too. I'm sure the movie industry was saturated with those kind of violations coming from both ends. The 50-50 thing we talk about in men's rights. I'm sure a lot of women violated men like that. A handsome man walks onto the set, and all of a sudden she was up. Oh, let me adjust your shirt. Oh, and then all of a sudden there's the little grab to see if the pecs are real. And but men, like you said, I was as emotionally distressed as a woman would be in that situation. I was fine.
And in the very heat of the moment, you're like internally panicking, like, okay, what the fuck? But here's the deal: I think men have I don't know if we're trained or it's natural. I really don't. I don't know the science on this, but we bounce back quicker.
We quickly bounce back from things. Yeah.
But it seems like in the moments that are extremely uncomfortable, we're just as exposed. Like, so that's interesting.
Men have a sense of denial. We have a section right here on the side of our brain where everything filters through that's larger than a female brain, and it stops everything for a split second. I don't know the actual time on it and everything, but it gives us time to observe things and observe situations. And then after a situation, we start reeling through the brain. I think, therefore I am. I'm a human. I go through all those little, and then we put it behind us. We deny certain things. We restrict certain things. We put it behind us. And we go, okay, that didn't mean that. I won't overreact to that. But women, that shit goes right to it, starts bouncing around in there, and it stays there.
You know what? In just talking about it, made me think about the context. And like normally, the overly aggressive female bosses around, she wasn't then. And this happened at like the doorway of that office.
Oh.
Where the stand-in, the second in command, is like this young, generic, kind of like younger guy. He's not a bad guy. He's not a horrible guy. He's just like a generic, gonna be a manager one day kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he's cool. I like him. We get along great. But he's just so fucking casual. He wouldn't give a fuck. You just reminded me of the context of why she would have done exactly that then. Mm-hmm. Because it was visible to everybody up front, like at the cashier level of the certain business, and the office of him, who's like the second in command, who's a dude. But it was not visible to supreme bitch overlord boss. Had she been there, it wouldn't have happened.
It wouldn't have, yeah.
Interesting.
It's interesting how what we do in here is a form of an art. We're quantifying our art. It's a philosophy is a form of art. Our philosophy is, Camus would say, art is rebellion is art. How we picture our rebellion against these things that happen to us, and then we take on a metaphysical rebellion, and then we don't want these things to happen anymore, and we have to. I mean, after a while, things get so old and so tiresome, and I just want my freedom, and I just want to be what I am and stuff. And we have to figure out little ways to avoid these things, or come into.
And that's interesting because the little ways, would those not be lies, or those different? Are those little digs into subtle truths that you have to kind of bury yourself into to insulate yourself from the reality that at times can be unbearable? Not unbearable, but like,
Yeah,
like just difficult. Like, and here's the deal: like, this is really not comparing conditions of like starvation, fucking being held captive, whatever. Like, this is just like, I'm left to my own devices. I'm choosing to operate in a modern society. That's the context, because those other contexts make no sense. Like, we have other ways of dealing with those other things. So,
yeah,
and then this is interesting because a lot of philosophy was only, and I think, here's the deal. Correct me if I'm wrong. Joe, let me ask you a question. Are any great philosophers, did they come from abject, fucking total, chaotic, just subjugation, oppression, just the most horrible of circumstances? Do we know that that's the case? Like, some of the best. Does any of the greatest philosophers come from that?
yeah.
And I'm not saying that
Some of
that
them,
they didn't experience it at all. What I'm saying is, like, they only came from that. Do we have any philosophers that only come from the worst of the worst?
the worst of the worst. That would be the Marquis de Sade and his philosophy of, and then Nietzsche was an incel. He was a man, and so you.
What? What'd you just say?
Nietzsche was an incel. Whittinger.
Okay, you need to expand on that, because that's the craziest thing I've heard all year.
Yeah, Nietzsche was a TFLer. He didn't have very success. He only had success maybe once or twice in his life with a woman, and he got syphilis from her. So Nietzsche, if it's pronounced right, it was an incel. We look at, Bacon was an incel, and a lot of them come from these incel roots. Whittinger was more like Camus. He was a very handsome man that didn't understand women. Otto Whittinger, he was sort of Mgtow in a lot of his ways, and he was sort of misogynistic in a lot of ways. And but he only went on one date in his life, and the female that he went on a date with says, I spent time with Jesus. That was her reply. He killed himself. He became into the 27. Camus was like Sinatra with Nietzsche's brain.
Okay, yeah.
So they come from different situations.
It's just interesting the way that you personally categorize them. It's fucking, that's really interesting. So I'm not arguing. I'm just saying, like, that's fucking crazy.
Now Camus.
So I've never say what?
Utter poverty. He worked his way out of utter poverty. And there was a World War II. His father was killed. There was World War II.
Who is this that we're talking about? I'm sorry.
Camus, Albert Camus.
Yeah. So he actually did some shit. He actually lived some life.
He lived some life. He that was a horrible period of time that he was born in. World War I, World War II. He was in France at that time. He was a poor. His father came over, an immigrant Algerian from to France, where they were looked at with no respect at all. His mother was a seamstress. His father died in the war, I think. I'm pretty sure. And he was, but he was brilliant. So his brilliance got him a scholarship to a school. And from there it grew.
I don't think that can happen anymore.
It would be hard for,
Like, I mean, if you're well indoctrinated and can feed that back, I think you can get a scholarship these days, pretty sure.
And we look at what
if you're the right demographic at the right time for the right quota, you can certainly get a demographic. And then you have to question, well, was it my merit or my status? And that'll as a human being, you'll probably have some head trips about that.
Yeah.
But if you're also an asshole human being, you won't care and just let it ride. Right. So
question the thing about the incels and what we're saying about an incel, we're saying he's a disadvantaged male that wasn't born with good looks, or he was born with some features that caused a disability in his life.
So I mean, this is the strange thing about like incels. So before I sort of took a lot of time off, I was trolling a lot of incel community stuff.
Me too.
And
I think we talked about that.
I would
just like to go look at it, see what they were talking about.
Well, yeah, and to see how much I could relate to, and see how much I would not be related to, because every time I was like more real about myself, I got more "fuck you, fuck out of here" kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing is that we know that incels are a group, and that group is subject to tribalism,
Yeah.
which is congruent with my ongoing theory since forever that any tribe of any sort, once it crystallizes an agreement on anything, becomes a tribe, and then acts like a fucking tribe, and acts moronically like a tribe rather than in the best interest of seeking for truth. That's my theory, and I'm never proven wrong.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, the truth is, people value belonging more than truth. 9.5 out of 10 times, like they just do.
Yeah, what started our conversation earlier as the search for SFM is like, but I said in that, I says, well, Hoka is becoming very popular. Held by the Dashboard Light, the other TFL, is becoming very, very popular now. They're garnering 72, 70, up to 80 hit. There's 80 people over the last listening to Steve Hoka right now. And then, like you said, there's this tribalism that comes in. And I seen a guy get exited yesterday by just bringing up a simple Mgtow. They just kicked him out. It's like bringing up a simple Mgtow term, and they kicked him out. So there's that tribalism. If you don't believe in what we believe in, you're gone. And you can't.
And that's when we know we're not dealing with discourse. This is not discourse.
No, it won't be discourse.
So, like, if these intergroups were even part of a same functionary plane of groups, like the manosphere is a misnomer, because it leads you to believe that like there's like this overarching community of men that have the interest of men at heart, which is completely fucking false. That is not the case.
Yeah, no,
the manosphere.
It's very group oriented. It's very, you're in my group or you're not in my group, and if you don't believe in me, there's no the dialectic doesn't work out. Like me and you, we bounce the dialectic back and forth once in a while and see how that lands. They have no clue how to do that.
No. And I think, like, here's the deal. Like, me and you, and I'm not, whatever, we're the best, but I'm saying me and you probably disagree a lot. And the disagreements peak, we recognize them, and then we move on. And you know why we move on? Because we move on, we recognize a disagreement, and we're looking, well, is there something we do agree on? Yeah. And then we might bump into a next disagreement, and then boom, 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 boom. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
That's
like, I guess we could freak out about the disagreements.
Yeah.
But we choose not to. I don't know.
That's how you get to that's how you, in any situation, you with two people that want to figure something out, one has to take this position, one has to take this position, and then you come to a meeting in the middle, or okay, you're right about that. Now I'll include that. Now I got something to include in my philosophy that works out to a truth. And then we learn from each other. And that's the way men are supposed to do it. But in this tribalistic thing with the incel, and they have this very closed view of the world. And, well, they don't do any philosophy in there.
Well, no, here's the deal. Like, they actually figured out something that's true. It's the way that they react to it that's really strange.
Right. Their reaction.
And interesting. What they realize is that men, contrary to popular history and belief, have forever been oppressed in the context that we use the word oppressed.
Yeah.
They figure it. So here's the deal. The truth is this.
They know
every human being that ever existed felt oppression from themselves or others or nature.
Mm-hmm.
Period. That's the end of the thing. Like, there is, you can't argue that. Yeah. From themselves, others, or nature, we have all felt or experienced oppression directly.
Well,
so if you want to get cute about it, you could be like, well, women experience a certain kind. Well, yeah, I'm sure they did. Men experience a certain kind. I'm sure they did. But the actual truth is this, and you can't argue it. All human beings, since the inception of our species, have been oppressed by ourselves, others, or nature. You can't refute this.
Right. The natural world's a cruel world. I mean, we're a planet.
And then as far as the value on that, it's like, well, is that a wrong or right thing? Well, if nature, ourselves, keep doing it, is it really in the realm of morality? Yes or no? That's sort of the reason for philosophy. Like, that's why we develop philosophies to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
So.
Whose argument is that? I can't remember right now. There's an argument that goes along with that. Like, in the natural world, these things are going to happen.
Natural law?
Natural laws predicts these things. And we as humans, this gift or this thing that makes us sentient, the ability to talk, the ability to communicate, the ability to empathize with each other, sets us above that. That's where we start looking for meaning in the world, more meaning, like things that animals don't ask themselves. Like a wolf runs up to a rabbit and kills it, and that's a naturalistic law, and he eats them. We do that, but we do it in different ways. We remove the casual cruelty. Most of us try to, but some people don't. They're always there.
See, whether it subscribes to that, like my personal philosophy goes into what you just said. However, is that there's an appreciation which can fill in the notches of self-hate, self-doubt, which is a human phenomenon, right? Because you realize that, like all these other species, they're all fucking glorious. They all have these modes of evolving. However you look at it, they're all fucking awesome. Oh, yeah. And the ecosystem is awesome, and the planet is fucking awesome. And our place as humans, being able to observe this is awesome. It's more of a privilege than a right. Like we weren't born with this dominion, like, I don't know, like a godly dominion to like be assholes to everything on the earth. We were actually given the privilege to observe things in a way that all the other things can observe. Yeah. That's fucking awesome. That is. And there's an absurdity there, though. There is. Yeah. But it leads you to appreciate, like, oh my God, I'm sorry, out of habit, I don't. Yeah. Oh my God, like, isn't it awesome that you can observe these things in all these weird ways and have these mind fucks, these mind trips, and be like, oh, that's dope. Animals don't care. Like most species of animals that we know, they don't care. They just exist. And here's the deal. We have the ability to admire that they don't care. That makes, it doesn't make us more awesome, but it makes the whole question awesome. The difference awesome is that we actually long sometimes to be as complacent in our existence as animals are by default. Right. Now you're with it's so absurd, it's awesome.
Yeah, my God's in the smile on a dog.
Exactly.
When I give Dougie that treat, or when Dougie was alive, and I held him for hours, and he appreciated that. I know when he smiled at me after that treat, or I gave him his favorite piece of cheese or something, and he looked up at me with love and endearment for that. I know there's a little more there. I know there's. I just know that when he smiled, that he sees me as God in that situation. And then I start asking those questions to myself: is the human form, the human mind, the human what we are and everything? Are we developing gods? Are we growing as that? Are we, because we are in that situation. It's my morning coffee argument.
Well, part of the morning coffee argument sort of gets like old school Eastern, Buddhist, because the idea of compassion is not like, oh, we're fucking humans and we can feel empathy in a way that nothing else can. No, we observe from the animal kingdom that, like, there's a certain degree of empathy that's had.
Right.
But we've decided we have this overarching degree of empathy that's called compassion. It sort of transcends regular empathy. Yeah. And then we're assholes to each other on who has it most.
Right.
That is absurdity in a nutshell.
That is a big absurdity in life. It's one of the bigger things that I question now about, I say humans are seriously flawed when I look at how we treat the homeless. And we talk about that all the time, how we treat, even I have a lot of compassion for my incel brother because I know he was born disabled. He was born with defects. He was born as a disadvantaged male. He has the same problems. When I look at the TFLers and the incellers, I know he has the same problems as feminism has. I know that he's not going to bust through that glass ceiling because, he's. Would you take one of those TFLers and make him the president of the company based on his looks? No, you want someone that's stoic, someone that looks like the president of the company. That guy is going to get it.
I mean, but here's the interesting thing, and there is science. Don't quote me. I have no sources, but I know one thing. So, let's say that you're an unfavorably looking person,
Yes.
right? Just from a symmetry and all that shit. Your attitude can literally change, for lack of a better word, aura or your facial reserve, like your normal posturing, all these other things, and all the forms of communication that are more important than words. So, like an ugly motherfucker that holds himself like, I ain't ugly, I'm commanding shit right now. I have something to say, and when I say it, you will listen because it's important and I can prove it. Yeah. That attitude. Here's the deal. This is not the same thing as telling an insult, you just have to have confidence. It's not the same thing. This is transforming into a confident fucking presence, not just a human being, not just like a fucking dude present. And here's the deal. Most people struggle with this. There's a little bit of luck, talent, skill set, all kind of shit that goes into it. Nobody has to figure it out. Some people have it more, some people less. That's fucking life. So.
Yeah. Now we can look at guys that, aren't very good looking guys, Jeff Bezos and what's the guy from Apple? They're regular dudes. They're born with a little bit of incel in them, and their mind, those great minds overcome. So we look at it, and we can look at it in the sense that they still have a utility to bring to to society, which people feed off that utility, which gave them those opportunities. Most incels, we know, they're not going to sit down with, they're not going to get the master's degrees. They're not going to sit down with a philosophy course. They're not going to sit down and become the greatest mathematician to overcome the defaults of self. They're not going to do that. And they're put in a very ordinary world. And those are the guys that I worry about. We can give exceptions to the rules on everything. There's always a guy that was like Nietzsche, was ugly and overcame.
There's an ongoing meme. I can't think of it. Maybe you can help me think of it. There's an ongoing meme where it's like, and it has something to do with being short.
Yeah.
And they're like either a more tall or more like present in any way sort of dude shows up. I forget what it is. It's an ongoing meme. Anyway.
Okay.
The whole meme is canceled out with the fact that like some of the biggest celebrities and politicians are short.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at Tom Cruise. He's 5'6".
There you go.
And
exactly.
Every time the camera pans on him, you would think he was 6'4", but he's learned to overcome that disability and everything. But he is extremely handsome too, and probably smarter than the average person.
Well, socially smarter? I don't know. Like, what does that mean? Like
to memorize the script, it takes a certain amount of intelligence, right?
I'll grant you that. So, like the intelligence, which could just okay. I don't. Here's the deal. Apparently, that intelligence is highly regarded to be able to memorize and regurgitate.
Really an intelligence.
I don't value it. So here's the deal. Like, if I had a company, I would not hire somebody that could just simply regurgitate. It'd be part of it, but not the key feature. So
yeah, but like I just said, I may have mistaken on that thing. A lot of people have talents that are utilities to people. Like Tom Cruise has a talent to memorize a script. That's a utility to the industry. They used him as a utility because he has a great capacity to do that. And it still boils down to a utility over the male utility over what he is, doesn't it? So even with Bezos, or even with the Apple guy, he has a utility that overcomes his disability, or any disability that was placed on him by birth. So in that sense, yeah, Mgtow is still kind of right in that sense. Like, it's always boils down to your utility as a male.
Well, I mean, and that's where I think, like, the time that I spent, like, with, like, the incels and the TFL, it was like, I had a bias, and I recognized my bias from the onslaught, but, and maybe I could be corrected, like, and I fucking gave so much compassion and so much value of them telling their own stories. But I never could shake the idea, like, okay, your only salvation is Mgtow. That's it. But here's the deal. This is not the consensus of that community. The consensus of that community is one of two things. Complete fucking nihilism.
Yeah.
Fuck everything. Everything goes. Or society must bequeath to us brides in some sort of fucking weird future that's never going to happen.
Right. That's what the alt-right is calling that. Society must bequeath to us that traditional female role where all women are going to get into, and they're going to take on that female fat and pregnant in the kitchen, and then I will give back my male role as provider and protector in that. That's a silly argument, because that water's under the bridge, and no women want to be treated, and I empathize with women on this. No woman wants to be treated like that so she can be a penis pocket at night and have this good. And the idea of some dude groping on her just makes me sick.
And I think it's weird because to the benefit. Well, here's the deal. This is a short-term benefit. So Mgtow has one benefit.
Yeah.
It did not get into the mainstream as a literal, ubiquitous way to diss people. Because now the very word incel is now a diss in the mainstream. Like, people that have no idea that the manosphere exists, that, like, men are talking to each other, like, they have no idea of those
concept in that too, because you're talking about a disadvantaged male. Would you talk the same way about a disadvantaged female? And it's the same thing as
we don't have that word. There's no word for that. Like, so here's the thing: we could pretend slut, thought, all the different words, colorful words that we have.
Yeah.
None of them hone in on that.
Whether they're and what they're really, I think what they're really talking is
viable. Now, here's the deal. We have no word for an unviable woman. There's no such thing.
One viability to begin with. It's granted by born as. They always have that. But the male has to have a utility. And if he doesn't have that utility, he's an incel. If a female doesn't have that utility, she has a
pussy.
She has that. We won't use that kind of language. Yeah, she has. It's true, but she has a default. Let's just call it a default utility.
But here's the deal: like, nobody should be mad at that. Like, Mgtow, feminist, and everybody in between shouldn't be mad about the stark reality that we are born with certain features. Like, that's the whole fucking thing. Like, but people are getting mad about this.
People are mad about it. Well, they're
getting more than mad. They're getting beside themselves. So.
I think that's the backlash of what we were talking about earlier. We don't have a way to articulate these things without violating some sense, like we did today. We violated some sense of social justice rules, didn't we?
Sure. I mean, but like,
that's postmodernism, where this thing has been brought to us and we can't violate. And in the mainstream, I've watched probably 100 newscasts in this year that all when they hinge on them words that might violate the social justice rules a little bit, they pull back, they balk from that.
What I find interesting is that like there are a lot of vocal, small, like fringe groups.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that the SJW variety got to where it is? Right?
Yeah,
Because they had contemporaries, they had competition, all sorts of competition, going back for 50 years, a whole bunch of variation
right
on opinions about the way the world should be, right? So why did
naturalism,
that particular brand come up on top?
yeah, how did that certain, because it's a way of control too. It probably goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. These things bring presuppositions to them with them. These presuppositions are there will be adverse consequences if you violate these presuppositions that may be just made up, and probably are just made up, some kind of feeling or some kind of, it's always based on the metaphysical. It's always based on that. And then if you don't, it's the negation, the not gate. If you don't do that, you will never have to experience that, and you won't get thrown in the lake of fire. But if you do violate, if you say, no, I don't believe that, that's when you'll see the lake of fire. And that will be on this planet. So they use that same sort of idea too from Pascal's wager. It's that same religious idea that's been passed down. It's okay to do that in our society. So social justice warriors.
It's almost exactly the same because
yeah,
from what I can tell, and this is definitely not original, but it's a religious fervor that mentality.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's questions of morality. First of all, it's a question of morality. So that falls into the naturalistic and modern, postmodern naturalism. We're talking ideas like things you can't say and things that won't be permitted. And these things, them are the restrictions that were put on. So if we can't articulate certain things, then...
But whether by design or just fucking weird and organically, the value system makes no sense. It's as if like, hey, you can't punish a certain person because they're a certain fucking identity because of that identity. And you totally overlook the crime. And then you totally overlook the idea of like, as a society, should we be punishing this one thing? There are better questions to ask than the identity of a person, right?
Meaning is bigger than that crime. We had a good example of that this week or last week when Kobe Bryant passed. The school teacher in Washington. Did you read that story?
Maybe briefly. Yeah, I don't know.
She was suspended from her job because she looked back. And she said Kobe Bryant was accused of rape. So, and she made a smart comment. She said, Kobe Bryant probably, is this karma? She said, is this karma returning to Kobe Bryant for the accusations of rape in 2003?
Wow. Yeah, that's fucked up.
She said that out loud. And she was a school principal. And then it got on Twitter. And then it was twittered. It was twittered somewhere, and there was somebody took it, and then they screenshot it. They put it up on Twitter. She was lost her job. Now these are social justice things that are working out. And what she was really questioning was she had an opinion on how the trial went and how it was dismissed and everything. And we can look deeper. And did she really mean? She didn't really mean that. That she wishes Kobe Bryant would pass on to the next life because of this karma from. She doesn't believe that. I think.
No, I mean, built into the belief system is this. Built into that comment is that his death, represents a proof of like rape culture, sort of thing, and that's what it really meant. Yeah. Here's the deal: how plugged in she is to feminism or not is almost irrelevant. It is that's the message she said. It was like, should we really be mourning a potential rapist?
Right.
And that's the key factor right there, is that
now when you look
even the accused are treated as the convicted.
Now, it was interesting that Mgtow never picked up on that, because that's what, in reverse, we get accused of the same social justice crimes and everything, or we're set in that situation where we're saying like, well, maybe these women that tried to kill their husbands, or maybe they're gone too far and everything, but we get held to that same thing and we get censored. And in every negation, there's a positive. And on the stream of the thought, if you take the opposite end of that, you would say that, okay, Mgtow gets punished all the time and we get our stuff taken down for the same, violating the same culture. So should we have gone to bat for her? But it didn't even come up in Mgtow whether we didn't go through that argument.
Well, I mean, that's interesting, because part of the argument is like, is there a fundamental freedom of speech cornerstone to the Mgtow philosophy, and or not? Like, if there's a fundamental freedom of speech cornerstone, does that stop when it goes against us?
When it goes against,
when it goes against our narrative, like,
yeah,
like, let's pretend Kobe Bryant was a convicted fucking rapist. Do we stop it then? Like, or like, when do we stop? And here's the deal, like, and this is interesting because in the beginning of the conversation, you talked about like, we shouldn't be political, but freedom of speech is a political fucking thing. So we're like, what do we do?
It's more of a human.
Like, where do we stand?
Yeah.
And I think it has, you know what? I know where we go. I know what we do. It's every individual Mgtow. You can have a legion of Mgtow that want to stop freedom of speech in a certain way. Like, well, women shouldn't be able to do this and that and say this. Fuck you. I'm of the Mgtow Accord. Let it all ride out. And the best arguments will win. And if there's corruption when those arguments win, we should spot them and tear them down when we can, if we can.
Right, back there, you run it through a truth table, and if it's true, even though it may be an unfriendly observation, and some of this stuff that we're going to run into is an unfriendly observation for me and you, and okay, now that I've ran that through the logic gates and it's true, how do I react to that in my life? Do I incorporate that in life, or do I do a conservative bias where I disregard that?
It's funny, since we're talking about the Bryant accusation itself, I remember still living in Colorado, because it happened in Denver, apparently, right?
Yeah.
When it first happened back in the day, and I'm like, that shit didn't happen. And I was blue pill at that point.
Yeah.
I'm like,
happened. He didn't do it.
I'm like, my first thought is like, what crazy Coloradan bitch trying to come up and get rich off of this dude? That's my first initial response.
Right.
Was it biased? Was it sexist? I don't fucking know. So
it was biased by your blue pill nature at that time. We know better now. We do this argument all the time. We know that things aren't black and white in those situations. We know that she came up for disingenuous reasons, and we know that he had disingenuous reasons. We sweep our side of the street too in Mgtow. He had disingenuous reasons. There was no way that she was up there unless he wanted to get some. And those are the disingenuous reasons. But what was she doing entering that situation and in egressing into that situation if she didn't have disingenuous intentions too?
Yeah, this is why the idea of like consent laws are coming into effect, because they want to privilege women with, I don't know, like a supreme power of like any point of an encounter.
Yeah.
She can go back on, which makes no fucking sense. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
Like, if men were honest with themselves in the course of courting to copulating to having to fucking listen to her right afterward.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that event, you could be like, okay, this isn't cool.
You can egress. Ingress.
Exactly. But we're not afforded that.
No, that's
by default.
There's two things that happen with the male, that if he does try to get out of that situation, he's called gay. he's called this, you're not a man. And he can't afford that shame to be put on him. So most men go along with that up to a point. Now, in law, I can't remember if it's Swedish, Norwegian, or the lawyers ask a series of questions in these things. And okay, she got in the car. We talked about this before. She got in the car. That was a point of, she had a door. A door is an egress or an ingress. She had a choice at that moment. How many of these choices did she make to get up to that point where she's in this bed with him? And it was a yes, 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 yes. And then all of a sudden there was a no.
Yeah.
Does all those yeses outweigh that does that no outweigh those single yeses? Because she put herself there. And
well, I mean, it's not only that, but sometimes it's more complicated. Sometimes it's like yes, 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 no. I changed my mind. Yes.
My mind.
Yes, yes, yes. During no.
No.
Never mind on that no. Yes, yes. Like it becomes ultimately confusing because you cannot quantify human behavior as it occurs.
That's why,
while it's occurring.
Because at a point it became ambiguous, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It became an ambiguous argument. There was all these yeses and all these no's, and I can't make out whether any jury member or any judge could go, this is ambiguous at this point.
And this is a Pandora's box, because like if we reverse it to when men are consensual during the act, guess what? Men are fucking complex beings.
Right.
They could be in the act and be like, you know what? I don't like this. I don't like this shit. I don't like the way it's happening, whatever. Even for a moment, it would be a no. But the fact that the next moment is a yes, it's stupid. Yeah. We get into retarded waters with this yes-no thing per moment.
I gave an example on my last podcast of an incident where in high school I used to run into this all the time, where a girl would want me and then she would approach me, like happened to you with the strings. She wants you, she approaches you. You have a right to say no. And but in this culture, things come about on that. Joe, and I experienced it immediately. What are you, gay, Joe? You should have, you're held at this manly standard that you had to do that. And it just to prove, hey, I'm a man, and
yeah.
And that's the same kind of rape that the feminists talk about. Men get raped all the time in that, in those situations where they feel they can't say no. And the Mgtow monk, we've overcome that. We say no all the time. No is the greatest word. It's the negation of all that. It's the negation of that absurdity. But in this society still, where men go on TV and they still get laughed at, like what's his name? I can't remember the guy who was on that show, and he was the men's right guy promoting his book. And they said, and at the end, it's like, do you have a girlfriend? The correct answer would be, that's none of your business, woman. As you're sexually harassing me at this point, asking me about what I do with these things. But he said no. And then the whole audience lit up laughing, like, yeah, of course you don't, because now you're an incel. You're shamed.
It's getting to the point. Here's the deal. And I've already seen this. Like, I can't fucking find who said it or whatever, but like just the other day, I heard from the perspective, like,
around there,
if you deny female affection, you're an incel.
Right.
Which we both know, like, here's the deal, like, without a context, it's denying female attention.
It's denied. Yeah.
If we know the man and know his intentions and his worldview, it could be Mgtow. Maybe it's something else. Yeah. However, the base fact is that he denied female attention. So
you're not happy.
But that's a disparage. But here's the deal. It's not only that.
You made a girl.
That if we can conflate that denying female attention is the same thing as an incel, and we know that incel is fucking evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that say?
What does that say?
The culture has turned that a man's autonomy, his very choice, has been weaponized, right. And he can, like, we're really at this fucking crazy point, like, where he cannot do any right, and at all. He can never do the right thing. As far as someone operating in society, a man can never do the right thing. That's what they're trying
Well,
to
it's
do.
subjective now too. It's subjected to a million different little events that get filtered into the argument. Wow.
Bless you.
Oh,
Bless
excuse me, guys. I usually have a napkin around here for that. But
Logic table, bless you.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, that kind of brings up another thought: how religion permeates our language and everything, doesn't it? How that
It does. I'm like, I stopped being pissed at it. Like, here's the deal. Like, when it does come up, I appreciate it because religion has provided us the bedrock to identify certain things.
Mm.
So without it, I don't know where we would be. But it's almost a mute point. Religion has allowed us to recognize the follies of religious behavior.
right.
And so when we see that from the left, the right, men, women, whatever,
Mhm.
we should be able to identify it. And if we don't identify it, we might be religious.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. We get called monks around here because because I say no, and I'm not that man, and that's what we were accused of, and basically me, because I started the whole monk thing. Years and years ago, I was the progenitor of that whole thing. And then Sandman came around and he said exactly what he shouldn't have said. He said, you monks will be shamed, just like the girl would say, if you don't talk about this, if you don't say you're chasing skirts, if you don't say that you're on the same page as my religion, which is chasing skirts and PUA, that we'll call you monks.
Yeah.
He did the same. He did the same thing as society does to us men. He
No,
portrayed Mgtow in that sense.
the message was this is like if you propagate the idea that like you can abstain from the whole game, period, by not fucking,
Yeah.
right? If you do that, you were on par with like radical feminists. And since you can do that, all bets are off. There's no discussion.
Yeah.
Boom.
And
That's what it really means. Here's the deal. So here's the deal. To contemporary modern society,
Mhm.
he knows he has a point because he knows that modern society has been transfixed with the idea that like attracting the opposite sex or whoever you want to attract is status. And your ability to do so is status. You're not allowed to opt out of that game. That's the message.
That's the message. I'm not allowed to opt out of the game. But us Mgtow monks are saying, it's not about me opting out of the game. All I was simply saying is I'm a Stoic male. I'm not going to sit and share these things with you of my life because there's more important things to talk about. And every time we get into these arguments, they break it down to that base emotion of love and those things. And I don't want to talk about those base emotions. I want to talk about the logic in our laws, how most of them are absurd. And if I want every man that comes around in Mgtow, the default setting of every man is abstinence. It's group X. It's like, if I'm working on my car, I'm not thinking about that. I have a job to finish here. That's the default. When you're at work, you portrayed it perfectly when she touched it's like, I wasn't in that mode. My default position was getting work done here, not her touching me. And you were set in that situation. It was perplexing to you. Because that's what you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to be taking that to work. When you're working on a car, you're not supposed to be thinking about that default mode of asexuality. I'm not thinking about that default. And Mgtow in that default mode, we go, I have the choice to say no too. And I'm in that default mode that which is very natural and should last for 99% of the day. But somehow with this society, I get saturated by that garbage and they don't feel like they're sexually harassing me.
Because you're not an object to be harassed. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
Men have been deemed not to be harassable. We're not harassable.
Right. We cannot say, I cannot say in that situation, you can't say, I feel objectified.
But here's the deal, and this goes back way in the beginning of the conversation, and probably against Mgtow doctrine. So,
I understand. Yeah.
Men are collectively responsible for all the shit we put into being masculine, right? So when men poke fun at each other, locker room talk, all that type of shit, we do it to each other constantly, and we've done it in front of women constantly. So we've given women the idea like, hey, it's okay to harass us because when our fellows do it to each other, it's no big deal. It's part of being a man. And the distinction is never made.
Right.
The distinction is like, hey, calling your homie, like when you walk into work, hey, faggot. And you both know you don't think you're gay. You don't hate gay people. Mm-hmm. It's just something you do when you greet each other.
Right.
That's never part of it. What the woman perceives is that, like, oh, they're so comfortable, they're recognizing this, and like, that's the problem. Is that men, as being men, have sent a message that women can't figure out, and they're gonna use it. Yeah. They're gonna be confused and use it.
Well, they can't recognize the absurdity of that moment. It's an inability to recognize that what he said. Like if I walked in and my buddy called me that, I would recognize the absurdity of that and how funny it was.
Yeah.
But they can't recognize how absurd that is, that microaggression. They take it as a microaggression.
Like, and this is the interesting thing is like, and it applies to both heterosexual men and monks equally. And this is strange. So the absurdity comes from the fact that like that man the night before, either he fucked his wife, his girlfriend, his mistress, some side hoe, whatever, or he didn't fuck nobody and just hung out by himself.
Yeah.
The absurdity can come from either place.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I said there's two sides to every argument you're going to do. There's the dialectic on it. If you're going to take this side of the argument, then there's another side of the argument. And you do those sides of the argument, both of them. Like in Mgtow, if you look at Mgtow on a scale, you have a 1, 0 Mgtow, and then you have the monk Mgtow on the other side of the scale, and that's the dialectic should go back and forth, and you should figure out this place in the middle where, and I think I have it perfectly. I center myself. I don't center myself. I just put myself on a place on that bar where it makes the most amount of sense.
So the interesting thing about this conversation, let's take it to the next level. So mainstream has showed its hand on how it really feels about men, how the way it received and uses the word incel, right?
Right.
Who has distinctly not used this word? And I'm not saying all, but who doesn't use this word that much as an insult? Who we should see it from, but we don't.
Who doesn't use that word? Oh, I don't. Yeah. Oh, feminism doesn't use that word. I think they see.
And why is that, Joe? Why is that?
Standpoint epistemology says that they can see the hypocrisy in it.
Yes. Well, maybe that, but I think fundamentally they realize that, like, if we use this word, we're smart enough in this gender game to know that if we distill males to sexual function and performance, then we validate why they've done that to us historically via patriarchy. Right?
They can't.
So we can't do that.
Right.
So some of them do it and slip up, but most of them don't do it.
When they notice that hypocrisy, that they're doing a lie of omission, aren't they? They're just not going to talk about it. They're not going to say incel.
So, I mean, and this kind of brings up a point like that, whether Mgtow wants to realize it or not, it's entered a level of arena where it's going to be compared in a diametrically opposed position to a feminism, but equal to always and forever. Here's the deal: Mgtow had a long run where it didn't have that status. It was this free flowing I guess at worst misogynistic, but at least it was a standalone thing.
Right.
But now it's a diametrically opposed feminism.
Yeah.
And that's the consent. Here's the deal. It may not be true, but it is contemporarily the fact. It just is what it is. And most MGTOW have no idea how to answer that. They just don't.
Yeah, now you got to start getting into the philosophy of science, and we're talking about people's paradigms. We're starting to talk about incommensurability and what you think versus, and then what we're doing, what we talked about earlier about doing that discourse and doing the dialectic on it. And that's where I say that feminism and MGTOW need to talk, and they need to sit down someday and have a serious talk. But you got the men's rights movement that still does the open misogyny, and then the incels that, they're going to do their thing and they're still begging. And the TFLs are just can't get over. I don't know what their philosophy is. But the two logical groups here is basically, the feminism and MGTOW, and we really need to talk about these things so we can figure out what we agree on and what we don't agree on. But until everybody stops, there's this paradigm thing that exists now, and in the sciences of this and everything, that somehow men get this free up pass or something that they need to get over, because we don't really get a free up pass, because incel in itself proves that wrong.
Yeah.
So, but we really do need to talk. But
think about it, like the way, and this is interesting because our whole culture is like this. So like, when you need to bandage a wound, what do you need? A Band-Aid.
A Band-Aid.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, our culture is about brand names. So whoever's the top dog, here's the deal.
Right.
Whether they're communists or fucking whatever, what rises is the brand name. Right. So
popular,
and we're gonna, like, MGTOW and feminism is at that struggle right now.
Right.
Who's going to be the brand name of either doctrines, worldviews, philosophies, whatever, right?
If I was,
who's going to be the brand name?
If I looked at this and you go, okay, Jessica Valente on one end, and then I go, okay, who's the popular brand name on the other? Sandman. That's a useless conversation there.
It's cringe. At all levels, it's fucking cringe.
Or Sargon of Akkad arguing with Jessica Valente would be cringe. You know who I want to talk to? I want to talk to someone. What's her name? Pegmelia.
Camellia.
Camellia or whatever.
You fucked me up too.
Yeah.
Camellia. She old Italian bitch, right?
That's
sorry.
What? She talks my language, and she talks postmodernism, or who else?
Do you know why? Do you know what? Here's the deal. I figured out. I think it's. Oh my god! You fucked me up. You got the fucking P, the consonants all messed up.
Carmela Pagmelia. Carmela.
Total old school Italian broad. Do you know why? So here's the deal. If you look at a record, she is old school as fuck feminist, right? Second, third wave feminist. She's been there for a long while. How the reason why she seems appeasable to a MGTOW mind frame is this. She somehow sees that men are not by default evil, and she's also done one thing that's crazy for a feminist to do. She has expressed affection for masculinity in any of its forms.
Yeah.
Military,
right.
Home worker, random father. She has done this. And this is why certain men in MGTOW would perceive her as being like, oh shit, what the fuck?
How about Susan Vanker too? She talks the postmodern language. She's very smart. There's none of that just populism, ad populism, and that's the big thing that we're talking about. Yeah, Sandman's popular, but that would be a cringe argument. because he doesn't talk the philosophy. He doesn't talk the postmodern language. Jessica Valente, as smart as she is, she doesn't talk the postmodern language. You have to have people that this incommensurability thing has to be, and that's where talking the same language, you have to have people that are bright enough and smart enough to do the argument, and they may not be popular.
Well, I mean, think about it, like on our side, we have TFM.
Yeah.
Imagine TFM representing the question of women's rights, which in my opinion is separate from feminism, always has been, in my opinion. So when you say women should never have been granted the right to vote, that's fine. That's cool. That's an opinion to have. You can argument it all day long. But when you do it from the justification that they're women and inferior, and that's sort of your argument, as far as you could do it in a different way. You could be like, all right, since women have the right to vote, things have went this way, has not benefited women. That's a way to smartly go. And we could go there, but he hasn't done that. He's just doing some shit show, fucking, Alex, whatever shit.
He doesn't do. We hear all these guys say they do the philosophy. I mean, how many guys around here actually do the philosophy? Marcus, me.
He's not around. Is Marcus even around?
I mean, I'm the last guy that.
So Groundworks is not around.
Groundworks is not around anymore. I'm supposed
Lazarus, like he comes up. Lazarus, formerly known as who?
Yeah. Now he was a good guy that could have. He was a guy that I would entrust with doing the argument. Even though he's into Western esotericalism now, which is just stupid, but I can trust him to do the argument and not be cringy, and that's a big factor too in this. So until we get that hero, until Mgtow learns to pick their heroes better, and that's always been a problem for men, picking your who's going to be your champion. Well, the mouthiest guy, we'll send the mouthiest guy up, and then when he gets struck down, like, oh well, he was mouthy, but that didn't equate to any strength. But we do need to do this conversation. I really believe that Mgtow lacks in the we so far behind. So in the stuff that I talk about in the postmodernism and until these guys, until we get like Harvard graduated educated guys that like Jordan Peterson that could actually talk the lingo and talk the language that don't screw it up, it's going to be hard to even present the argument.
Shit.
What'd you do?
Did I not? Oh, all right. Oh, all right. Never mind. I thought I muted myself, but I didn't.
Okay, no, you didn't mute yourself. Yeah.
So I mean, all right. So I think the biggest challenge that something like Mgtow has right now is not adapting. So most philosophies, most worldviews, even most online things, as a lack of a better word, adapt. For some reason, there have been elements in Mgtow that have refused to adapt. And so, and one of these elements is the core of so-called misogyny, right? And the attitude and the inward attitude of misogyny. So I think in a rebellious spirit, there's a great faction of Mgtow that rejoice in their externally perceived misogyny. They're like, oh, well, I'm a misogynist anyway, so fuck it.
Yeah.
And that's great.
That's
great and fine and dandy, but it doesn't work in your own personal life. I guarantee you it's not working.
Paul Elam did the happy misogynist, and that was like apologetics for misogyny. And it's like, we'll just embrace it. And then Rick RP said to me one day, he says, my biggest fear is that Mgtow, and this is just about a year or two ago, he said, my biggest fear is that Mgtow will become misogyny. And then after that, it's like, I look around and it's like, that's what we become. They fall back on these, it's easy. Misogyny is just, misogyny doesn't really exist. It's an opinion. And
here's your deal. Like in day-to-day life, it doesn't exist. These same proponents, like in real life, are probably some of the biggest people that have no spine and never stick up for themselves in the context of strong women talking shit to them, whether it's their mom, their aunt, their bosses, whoever it might be. They're probably the weakest motherfuckers. In reality,
so they rely on this burst of aggression, and that's misogyny.
In reality, the Western world has almost eradicated it, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right. So here's the deal. The question, especially from like the TFM fringe, is like, should we have allowed it to? And in one way, they have a point they got from us. In another way, it's too late.
It's too late.
And a wise person would tell you it's too late. If you try to reverse it, it will be the end of everything.
Right.
So rather than trying to reverse it, you use it against itself, meaning that if women have all these rights and privileges, then you charge them and you enforce the responsibility of such.
You enforce the responsibility of what they want.
And if they systematically refuse, things will sort of go back to a more tangible or tenable playing field.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's my idea, and I am not a father. So, okay, you want this thing where you have agency. Yes is yes. No is no. Okay, I agree. You want agency, but with all these things becomes responsibility and accountability. And that down there, you have to be totally 100% accountable and responsible for your actions. Because the reality of this thing is I'm only donating DNA. I'm not donating my life to you because I'm not taking on that. I'm not going to take on that traditional role of father. Father's a made up social construct. So, okay, we can agree on that. And I will not in no way ever be misogynistic against you or hold you back and or this perceived hold you back in industry. I won't be that guy. And I'll be a man above reproach on all this stuff. But with that comes one thing: accountability and responsibility. And if you spread those legs to some dude out there, don't come crying back to me that he made you pregnant, because he didn't make you pregnant. That was your choice.
And that's super woke, next level, 30 years. And guess what? I think naturally by itself, it will evolve. But legally
is
there would be a conflict. There's going to be a conflict.
Yeah.
So legally,
we're still.
So the same. All right. So we have a problem, and the problem is the same, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Christianity.
So
religion.
The problem is this: the old, usually white, crony fucking judges, right?
Conservatives,
keep making simp decisions over and over again. Here's the deal. So it's to the point where like you could garner one or two things from that. One, that they're simps.
Yes.
Right. And they just, or two, that being simpish and making simpish judgments has an overall effect, a desired effect for certain people. And guess what? We have both viewpoints in Mgtow, and I don't even fucking know which one it really is, to be honest with you. I haven't made up my mind. Like, are these many judges that go against fathers that are naturally fucking awesome dudes, or at least better than the mother sort of situations? Are they just simps? Or is there a reason why they would judge against a better parent?
Their interests too. You got to remember that after I talked about this the other day. After the Civil War, we had two things we solved. We had slavery and we had monogamy versus polygamy. That was the two issues in the South.
They're all combined. They're all fucking intertwined.
Yeah, we settled one with war. We settled the other with discourse and deliberation and legislation. So what we did with that is we said the Mormons are wrong. Go off to Salt Lake City and live, and you guys are wrong, and we're not going to accept that in the United States, and we're gonna give Christianity the advantage with their monogamy. So those laws started boiling down from that point, and those are the laws and those are the attitudes of the judges now. No matter how absurd it was to settle it that way, they're still going with that, and they're going to go with that idea because they see that as right. But the argument, that's what postmodernism comes in. The argument needs to happen where okay, you no longer can err on the side of the Christians because that's a violation of our constitutional rights. And that means this traditional conservative thing where you just give women free money and you have slaves. Now you can imagine what they did in that. They made all men slaves. They said we need the human machine, because even though we do have these machines now that brought on the age of farming and everything, and we still need the human machines, and those that duty of human machinery will go to all men. Plus, you will obey Pascal's wager. We're back to Pascal's wager. There's rules that are Christianity, that you're going to get married and not practice polygamy. But now in the 70s, what has happened is, you think about a baby mama. What is a baby mama?
For real? Don't ask me.
For real, the scientific explanation, or the religious explanation and the scientific explanation. She got married.
The bearer of one of your seeds, the mother of one of your children.
Okay, the mother of that, and then what she really is she was afforded the right of polygamy. She can move from one to the next, violating everything that we agreed upon back then. But men cannot do polygamy. It's still a law for men, but it's not a law, and that's where the roles come in. Oh, a baby mama can live in it.
And by the way,
that same
socially and culturally right now, there's a massive push for open relationships, which usually benefit women. So
now, when you think about these laws were made, and now they're allowing polygamy, and then you still have to be the slave. And that, isn't there a dichotomy that needs to be looked at in that there is some violation of the original agreements?
Absolutely.
Yes.
At least provide choice, because here's the fucked up thing.
Right. I don't want to be a father. That's the choice. I said.
This is the interesting thing, is that like most men are hardwired to produce, provide, and protect. Like triple P's, right? We are hardwired to do that.
Hardwired to do.
If in the right circumstances, we'll do that. There are other men, individual men, they're like, well, I like this P, but not the other two. Yeah. Or I like one P, and guess what? We should be living in a society where like a man can choose his P's and Q's.
Abortion too.
Right?
Yeah. I could choose abortion. I can choose to financially abort, like 70% of women do. But I don't have that right. Hey, can you continue talking for a few minutes? I forgot to bring another pack of cigarettes in here, and I have to crawl through the gauntlet.
All right, I'll just talk shit in chat. All right, let's see what's going on with chat.
Okay,
so I know,
right back.
But everybody's dissing each other in chat like crazy. We got Trans Gamer in there. That's an old time favorite.
Yeah.
Pocket Aces.
Yeah, they go at.
So what up, Pocket Aces? What up, Eric? Eric, I haven't seen you in a while, dude.
Oh shit!
Can't pronounce your last name because I'm not Viking enough, motherfucker. Hank the Mean Man. They call it peace beer, but I think it's LSD beer should be invented. That's a good idea. So let's do that. Can you imagine LSD beer? Pocket Aces, shut up. What is new, MZ? Nothing's new. What's new is I just got told shut up by some random faggot online. That's what the new shit. He's got a cool picture though. That's my boy. I think Pocket Aces is Joey Aragon. That's my wild fucking guess. It's just this crazy guess that came out of nowhere. So what up, Joey? Uh-oh. I hear the old man coming back. Everybody scramble. Everybody leave.
Did you see the Wizard of Oz thing I just did?
I don't know. I was looking at the chat. Fucking Pocket Aces, Joey Aragon talking shit. He knows it. I think if we could give an award to like the perfect shit talker in chats, it would be Joey Aragon. So
yeah, man.
Look at Eric. You were no Viking, motherfucker. What makes you think I want to be a Viking? What's up with that? That's racist.
Vikings are. I don't know.
Actually, I wouldn't mind being a Viking, but whatever.
Yeah, that's an interesting type. Sargon used to do that argument all the time about the Viking girls and the Viking men. And I'm not sure I really want to do that one.
Would a modern day Viking woman have your fancy? Would you be like, oh, you're different?
Yeah, would she be stoic, and would she have a system of honor about her? I mean, we looked at
she could cut a cow up into steak and with an axe, that type of shit.
Yeah, would she be willing to? Yeah, and I think what they see is like she's on the farm, she's in that traditional sense, and then the man he's like, oh, I'll be back. I have to go to war. Make sure there's a cut up cow when I come home. I know that doesn't happen in a day.
Yeah.
At that time, it would take months and months and months. And in that situation, she was on her own, and there's predators.
So as far as like that whole you could never be a Viking, what happened to the Vikings? Who are the modern day Vikings? Isn't it like Sweden and shit?
Eric's a Viking.
Yeah, the most liberal cucked fucking nations that we've ever seen. I don't know why they would be dissing me, but whatever. That's cool.
Eric's a Mgtow Viking.
I don't know what that means. Like, I mean, to go your own way, totally get it. But like to be a Viking amongst Swedes, and I don't hear news of your conquests and your revolutions. It's just weird. It's fucking weird.
Yeah. Now, when you think about what has become of that tribe of people, they're still around. They're still Vikings today. They're still people, and they have a whole culture up there. Some will complain about it. Some will say that's a great culture. They're still around today. They just don't ride around in boats anymore with swords.
Nobody is doing what they did 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
even
that's obvious.
The Irish aren't doing it. The English aren't doing it anymore. We don't ride around in like boats and clash against each other and fight to the death with a sword. We do it in different ways.
This brings up a point that it's not the main point, but I have a question to ask you, Joe. Do you think, is it just like in a Stoic way, it's just inevitable that we're all the cultures of our species are going to blend to each other and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be boring, but somehow superior. Is that the inevitability of our species, or is there going to be individual tribal resistance?
See, that
which
can't.
will somehow figure out how to get along with other tribes, and that'll be the future.
We can't all blend together in a million years. We can't. That can't happen, because you know what happens if that happens? There's no more diversity. So biological diversity means that no one will be able to mate with anybody else, because they will have genes that are so close together that they'll produce retarded children.
And be more susceptible to disease.
There used to be a concept of the 12 tribes. There has to be those 12 tribes in the world with different diversity, and they always have to come together, but never fully come together in a way where our genetics further themselves. And then If you took away one of those 12 tribes, that's the situation that you would get when they all blend together. Then we're a generic species, and then nobody can no longer mate. Because the consequences of mating would be so horrible, we'd have little kids that were deformed.
Yeah.
So that's a totally weird idea. They do that idea sometimes on in those space programs where they show this. You see it in Hollywood where they show like an Asian guy that has white features.
Yeah.
And the whole world looks like that. And these space things that everybody looks like they're half Asian. And
speaking of half Asian squirrels, fucking Whiskey just showed up. I got to give a shout out to Whiskey. Love that dude. I'm pretty sure he's not Asian at all, but I just had to say something.
Yeah. He can join anytime he wants. And
I don't know, like Canadians and Asians, they're really easy to get confused. So,
Canada has a large Asian population.
Every First Nation has a large Asian population. So, take that as you may. Could be a conquest. We don't know. You should get scared, like Asians are taking over. Just get scared and do shit for no reason.
That's tribalism there. That's like, hey, we can't have these Asians taking over our country.
Like, I mean, like patriotism and tribalism, people, they don't understand it's part of them.
There's a difference.
It's hardwired in them. Here's the deal. Like, you do have an individual choice on how to express it or suppress it. I suppose you could suppress it. I don't think suppressing it is healthy.
No, it's not.
I think getting in where you fit in is healthy, which could be a multicultural thing, could be whatever. Like it's like a special interest group. Everybody likes guns. Everybody likes fucking, I don't know, farming. You get vegetables, Mgtow, whatever. Like, just find a commonality, and get in with a positive tribe. Here's the deal. That's the point. A positive tribe.
Yeah. All for the other stuff. And I wanted to bring up the point that nationalism isn't tribalism. We see a lot of nationalism nowadays. It's trying to be pushed on us, but that's not tribalism, and they're two different things. Both of them are bad. But what we talk about, communalism, is something that we have to deal with. And that's not tribalism, and that's not nationalism. Communalism is a shrinking world and shrinking resources and more people, and we all rely on each other a little bit, whether we think we like to admit that or not.
Okay, so I think I might disagree. So, but I don't know.
You can go.
So ask the question. So what do you mean that nationalism is bad? Like, it's bad to have pride of your nation? What do you mean?
Over pride, like Germany.
But what is over pride? All right, so is over pride just Germany? But
it's hyper pride. It's hyper nationalism. Hyper nationalism is a bad thing.
So I will beg of you to make the distinction of
like
normal, healthy pride and Hitler pride. Like, what's the distinction? What's the crossover?
The same argument. On every bar, there's the dialectic. Nationalism, okay, I'm an Irish guy. I like to hang out with Irish people because I feel good when I'm around them because they're people like me. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the argument on the one side. On the other side of the argument is all us Irish people get together and we take over the world.
I thought that was imperialism.
No, that's hyper nationalism. In that argument, you can't go off the we're sticking on the field of the argument where there's only...
all right. So is that point bordering on imperialism? Like, we're so good, we need to spread our good around.
Imperialism, empirical one system. Yeah, empiricalism in that sense would be, there's one way of thinking about that. No, there's no one way of thinking about that.
No, not empiricism. Imperialism, like empire.
Would come down to empiricism, which would be a single empire. Yeah. So it's a single thought. It's a single mindedness. No, there's no single way to think about that.
Okay, so then let me backtrack. So, Joe, I know you live somewhere vaguely in the United States.
Yeah.
Do
And
you have a semblance of pride of being an American?
lately, at some points in my life, yeah, this is a good argument. Okay. At some points of my life, I was proud to be an American. At some points in my life, I'm not so proud to be an American.
All right, so let's hone in on the not proud. Why would you take on shame on the behalf of your nation for doing whatever? And
Well,
what was that whatever?
you know, when I was in the when I worked for the contractors and I was in the army, what period of time was it?
Okay, yeah. Shut it off. I know where you're going.
Yeah,
Shut it off. I
we
get it.
we bought.
In that specific way, sure. But do you think whatever happened at that point was on behalf of your nation?
Yes, I thought that I was nationalistic, and at that point, I was proud to be an American. We're going to fight this war on drugs, and then I found out that the biggest drug dealers were standing next to the president, and that's when they cut our program. I was ashamed, and I'm still ashamed to this day that I wasn't allowed to do my job. And if I was allowed to do my job back then, the opium crisis that we see killing kids every day would probably not exist today. That's when I'm ashamed of my country.
Which brings up a beautiful point. When
Ollie North did what he did.
No, here's the deal. Like, your experience brings up a bigger point.
Yes.
It's that, like, what happens when pride meets your personal morality? The two don't drive. And what do you do after?
What do I do?
Like, that's a huge fucking. Here's the deal. The best stories are filled with that.
Yeah,
these are the stories people want to hear about.
The rest of my life now, what I did in those situations, those things that morally I was asked to do, I was asked to put away like other men's lives. I was asked to fight in this war in a real way.
So, but were you asked by legit people, like sympathetic, noble people, or were you asked by like just fucking degenerates?
No, we were hijacked by politicians, and that's where the degeneracy came in. But the people that I work for, you know, the colonels and the people that believed that we were going to defeat this problem, and we did to in that point. Cocaine was out of, you know what it was. Cocaine use was like huge, and heroin use was like it was killing millions, and we took down a lot of those fields, and it was a violent thing that we did. So in that sense, we did a little bit of good, and we believed in that, and those were but in another sense, what they did to us is they just disregarded us. You don't hear about us in history. They said, oh, these guys were just subcontractors for their mercenaries. And we don't have to this day, I don't get a pension for that. I'm not considered a real member of the military anymore. I'm not considered, you know, a guy that went off to fight for my country. They dishonored us. They left us behind. And America says they never leave people behind. No, they left us behind. After that Ollie North thing popped off, every soldier that ever fought for that cause was left behind. And they don't even give us credit to we were fighting a real war. That's where I was, man, I'm so ashamed of my country. And we're not even allowed to talk about it.
And I think that the normal brain could extrapolate that. Like, you know, that's probably happened more than a few times.
Yeah, it's probably happened more than a few. It probably still happens today.
So how do we call out the behavior? Is it, like, if that behavior becomes an apparatus for the U.S., what does that make the U.S., right?
Yeah, well, there's always going to be private wars and contractors and people that are sent out and secrecy to, and even in the times of Roman times, there was private wars, contractors, and people were sent out in secrecy to assassinate people for the nation. You know, there's always going to be those we don't want. And I'm proud of, like, at that point, it was so silent. Nobody knew what we were doing. And it wasn't like Vietnam where the hippies were like, you guys are killers, you're killing. We did it in such a way where we had a private war that so benefited this country and nobody even knows about us. So there's always going to be those things. And it happens now. I mean, how they take care of it now too is usually through contracts, Blackwater, and stuff like that. Okay, we got a situation here. We can't send our military in. Boys, go take care of it. You're the hammers.
And if you don't do it, you'll burn here. You will burn in hell.
Yeah, and that's the nationalism.
So, in the context of, if you don't do what you were trained to do, you will burn in hell.
I don't know if they told us that.
Does that make sense? Like, I'm trying to pivot back to the subject, but and we're getting onto like three subjects when I say what I just said. If you don't do what you were trained to do, you will burn in hell.
If you don't do what you're trained to do, either you're going to die or you're going to burn in hell. And if you die, doing that, then the final last measure. If you give the final last measure and you die doing that, we'll put a little hero thing on your card,
And that's the question: is that good enough?
I don't think it's good enough.
I'm not asking in the context for the country. I'm asking, is that good enough for the purpose of an individual man?
No.
Is that good enough to completely sacrifice yourself for that sort of thing?
No, but we can convince men in these ways that your job is to put yourself in that kind of risk and completely sacrifice yourself. Give that final measure.
Yeah, we can, because of men's defaults. I mean, here's one thing that Mgtow has never argued.
What? You're doing it for the girls. You're doing it for society. You're doing it for that.
Well, I mean, no, like what you just said is the way it's spun on us, but like the actual way we're hardwired is a little bit more simple, and some could say noble, like we protect, we provide. Here's the deal, like one thing that I've never, like in all my manospherean dealings, nothing that's ever been disrupted is the idea that men are here to protect and provide.
Right.
Like,
but I question
this is what we do, and most of the time happily, but sometimes not so happily.
Right. Yeah. What if I don't want to be that father? What if I don't want to be your lover? What if I just say no, like a monk? I'm just saying no.
In a society, that should be your right. As a human, you're an outsider, but that doesn't mean that you should be shunned or fucked with.
Sean, we still have other things that I can give to society, other benefits.
Such as what? Like for the sake of argument, like what else could you give?
Good electrician. I take care of furnaces. Big furnace.
Okay. So you're still a producer, no matter what.
I'm still a utility. I wish it was a point where.
Doesn't this suck? Like the 3 Ps. Like we're always distilled down to 3 Ps.
The default position was I'm still a utility. And I suppose the next default position would be, well, you get to still be a utility.
Well, I mean, it only sucks, but like we're also hardwired to not think that being useful sucks. And so like
society rewording the
same. I don't like. I've heard a thousand. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off. So go ahead.
Yeah, isn't that society just rewording the same answer?
It's rewording kind of a biological fact that men are hardwired to want to produce, protect, and provide. And guess what? If some of those things don't work out, that's fine. But those are the 3 constant fucking P's, dude. That's who we are.
Yeah.
And it's but here's the deal, and I think Mgtow sort of rectifies this. You have the protect, provide. Oh shit! And now I lost the other one.
Yeah, protect, provide, and
produce.
Produce, yeah.
Protect, provide, produce. You have this triology right? And you should be able to choose amongst these
Right.
tenets
That,
of who you are.
that production.
As a society, here's the deal. Like, when you're out on your own, you have no choice.
Yeah.
You have to do all three for yourself.
Right. Well,
But when you choose to be a member of society, it would be nice if you could afford or avail yourself
right.
of these things when you want to, I guess.
Now, we talk about that last one, the means of production. You become the means of production. Who controls the means of production? We start getting into the Marxist versus the dialectic, and the Marxist versus the proletariat versus the burgess, and that. And do you have the right to, and this where the hypocrisy is too, all men have to be the means of production, which is very socialist. And it's like, we live in a country that's democratic, and it's like, and we hear all the time how we're not socialist, but is that really true when our banking system is socialist, that all men have to be the means of production, and someone controls that means of production?
And this is actually the very point which feminists should be reminded of, that if socialism, which is only the revolutionary stage of communism, when communism becomes into effect,
yes,
women becomes a means of labor, including child labor, which means that they will be deduced to how many children can you produce.
Right.
This has never failed. This theory always works out that if you're not a viable childbearing woman, you're fucking dead. Just like a gay guy, you're fucking dead.
Yeah, but we don't treat women like that. We give systems, we have altruistic systems that take care of people, and them are even being questioned by the same people that the traditional conservatives want to take away those systems, and we don't realize that they're taking on that male protector provider role in that.
And you know what, Joe, I gotta be honest, and this can be very unpopular. You might even hate this. I think in the realm of our species, like, here's the deal. So, like, I have my disagreements with Darwin.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. But I mostly think his idea was basically sound. It had something to it. I think we have extrapolated a lot of good science from it.
Right.
And this is what I have to say. Our society for a long time has allowed the weak to go on. We have no measure to let the weak die off, and thus our gene pool is filled with bullshit.
That comes up.
Horribleness.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the deal. And this is not biracialness. This is not biracial or fucking gender. I'm just talking generally. Our fucking species is corrupted with bad DNA.
I take on that argument, and Jefferson's, I read it from the book once I did a video on this, the gods of war. The gods of war won't take the brokeback or the humpback male. He won't take the male with the club foot. What he wants is the alpha male. What he wants is the strongest and the smartest. But in those things, the gods of war kill off all the best of men, and all we will be left with is the worst of men. And I think that's where our society, Americans been at war for so long that our gene pool has been diminished by war.
Yeah.
And then when we start talking about what do we do now with the autistic kids, what do we do with the percentage now is that's all that's being born is millennials that they're whiny and they don't represent that masculine class anymore that we used to revere. But we've killed off the masculine class by going to war, because the gods of war only take on the best of men.
And when you do that,
you kill yourself.
And you rail against the certain tenets of masculinity, and at the same time, bedfellow a certain extreme that exists on one part of the world, that is trying to come into you and has it in their doctrine. Here's the deal. I'm not dissing a whole religious side. However, it's embedded in that religious side to take over. It's just part of what it is. Like Shining Light's not here to say, "Oh no, that's not true." Shining Light's wrong. He knows motherfuckers trying to take over, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Humans are sort of predisposed to take over. Like here's the deal: like the Matrix fucking movie, dumbass fucking agent, whatever. He was right. We're a fucking virus. It doesn't matter if it's via Christianity, via atheism, via Islam. We try to take over by any means necessary.
Yeah, we are the virus.
It's what we do. And so, like, me and you, as philosophers or philosophical-minded dumbasses, like, we can try to figure this stuff out, but does it change the tides that bear upon us? No, it doesn't. Like,
no,
the behaviors are the same, whether they're from Muslims, Christians, LGBT, conservatives. Like, fucking conservatives are getting crazy lately. Like, all these people, they're all doing the same thing, and we're the ones on the outskirts saying, hey, you guys are all fucking crazy tribalists. Can you please calm down and let's be human for once? And they're like, what'd you just say? What'd you just be human for once? What? Like, we're crazy.
Yeah, we need about 100 years or maybe 200 years of naturalistic society just taking place without war. So men can regain their masculinity, better children, more diverse, stronger. You know, every time you mate, you're gonna mate with something you believe is stronger than yourself, and then that cycle starts taking over. And then 10 generations down the road here, which won't be too much time at all, but 10 generations, you have those masculine men, you have those stoic women, you have those things that Darwinism would say would take place, the stronger. But in that too, there's going to be stress in Darwinism. And I think that's where we're going. We're going through an era of stress now, where our genetics, our very genetics, is being stressed.
I mean, and it's weird because, like, now that I know it, I said it out loud. I'm thinking about, like, well, no, I'm not going to censor it, but I will add to it, and it will add to the whole Darwin thing. Here's the deal: you got your brutes and your intellects.
Yeah,
and I think a certain balance, and nobody has figured this out, of the two provides the best results, right? So, like, you have to value your laborers, you have to value your fucking administrators in the same way here. And that's the problem, is that no society, whether it's communism, capitalism, whatever, has figured out the balance to value both, where everybody's happy and they don't want to rebel. And here's the deal: like, so you could have a whole brute society where everybody's just fucking shit up and strong as shit. The fucking brainiacs will rebel, and they will find a way to recruit some outskirt.
Is always,
Yeah. So, I mean,
chapter 22, Camus, The Rebel, goes over this about what is rebellion and what are we how we look at rebellion and everything. He goes over in chapter 22 about he goes through all the forms of it, and he comes up with there's one perfect form, and that's when the proletariat and the means of production is distributed equally, and then the proletariat becomes the means of altruism. And then everybody in that system is happy then. And there's no reason to rebel. But that seems to be something that never happens in this. There's always one group that considers, I need to live in a bigger house because I have more status.
Well, it's probably because that's not compatible with human nature.
Yeah, there's always this status, this who's going to be on top, who's the authoritarian figure. And that's what we said, the third part of that original, we go back, we digress to the thing. The authoritarian figure was telling you, you're going to go to hell if you don't believe in what he's being authoritarian about that. He's the problem.
So like even in the scope of Mgtow, like Mgtow went through a phase where it accepted this idea of like wolf pack as the hierarchy of humans, when it was, even before it arrived at that point, it was debunked. That's not how humans operate.
No.
But people clamored onto it because it had, nice beta, alpha, this, that, and the third. We don't operate that way.
Yeah.
We don't as humans. It's similar, vaguely, right? So that's why certain words stick, alpha, beta, whatever. But generally, it doesn't work for wolves, as proven. Like, the first theory was debunked. So it certainly doesn't work for us. But nobody has a better idea. Yeah. Nobody knows this is weird. 2020, we do not have a full and complete understanding of human hierarchy.
Well, that's what we're arguing about.
What does that fucking tell you, dude? Joe, what does that tell you? Like, it's so late in the game, and scientifically, we do not have an entire and absolute view of our hierarchy.
That's where our paradigm is changing now. We got in the 60s, things happened in the 70s. The philosophy of science took a different look and a different approach. We moved into postmodernism, but that's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. The whole language has got to change. The way people view things has got to change. You have to get a different paradigm on how this world's going to work, and that's what we're arguing through now. And that's evolution. The human mind's going to get bigger.
I get it.
And we're going to argue through these things, and we're doing that right now, but we have certain parties that are inhibiting that. The religious, their argument, and is just lunacy, and it's back to the same old absurdity. And there's people that on both sides of that political that don't want this thing to happen.
But guess what? Like, whether it's intentionally or inadvertently,
I think it's going to happen.
Those things start to shape the evolution, the way it evolves. So and this is so weird about humans. We're a product of evolution, but we're not experiencing it now. No, everything we do and say, every technology we develop, every chemical we've leaked out for 50 years and people have ingested makes an effect. And here's the deal. We've done so many things in such small amount of time in the scope of history.
Yeah.
We have no fucking idea where we're going evolutionary wise.
Yeah,
right?
We're stuck right now because after the age, after we've seen the horrible effects of industrialization and human machinery from the Civil War to Russia to China, where absolutely billions of people were massacred, and Russia, and there were hundreds of millions of people were massacred, and even our own Civil War, where a percentage of our population were massacred because of the Industrial Revolution. That was just going through stress, and we're going through it now, and we continue to go through it. We continue to have those effects from those things that happen, but mentally. And I'm a big fan of neurodarwinism. I think the human brain has the capacity to grow. We can start using more neurons. We can get smarter, and that's what we're going through now. We're catching up with our Neanderthal body.
Well, I agree with you. If we shake the fat off,
we gotta shake. Yeah.
And here's the deal. I'm not I don't want the masses. I don't want violence or whatever. But here's the deal. I just understand that to go for in a better way, and not by violence or fucking revolution or military or whatever, a bunch of us need to drop off. There's a huge contingent of the human species
that aren't going to be
that are maybe good people, but they gotta go.
Make it in evolution. Yeah. Which ones are the blue beetle in the desert that didn't make it? Why did the black beetle make it?
And then here's the deal: who wants to survive? And this is a litmus test.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because it applies to Mgtow too. Because I already know some answers, and it's this: if shit hits the fan, and it goes to really extreme levels, you get no electricity, you get no this, you get no that. Yeah. Do you still want to live? And a lot of people, even amongst our ranks, are I don't even want to fucking live at that point.
Yeah,
Well, then fuck you,
yeah.
motherfucker. You don't get to live.
They couldn't.
He's like the number one priority in being the next DNA
Yeah.
is the desire to be the next DNA.
Right. Yeah. That's gonna. Yeah. Stress will sort itself out. And the people that the people that survive through whatever is coming, whatever shape it takes. I'm not saying it's going to take that apocalyptic, hellfire shape. There's going to be a sorting process during this thing, and maybe it's the smarter, maybe it's the more fit, maybe it's the it's hard to tell which characteristic is going to be the one that matches evolution. It's almost impossible to prognosticate that too.
It is.
And
because the relationship between us and evolution,
yeah,
we have no idea. So like from other species we can observe, sort of makes sense. There's patterns, but from us, we're a wild card.
We're a wild always. Card. Yeah. It's like which one? Yeah, it's hard to tell. And but I think the red pill in itself is a genetic mutation of thought that has a lot to do with neurodarwinism and evolution. A lot of people are starting to see this thing and going, there's a new paradigm amongst us, and we all have to start. At a certain point, the feminists and the Mgtows are going to have to get along, and we're going to have to do this. And then the rest of them that don't want to will probably be the ones that are fading away, because one thing about the human species is this new paradigm's coming, and it's coming, and you can argue all day with it, but unless you get on board, you're not going to be the one. And I think that's what we see with the incels and the you're not going to be the one that mates. You're not going to be that one that gets that choice, and that you will be sorted, and your family will die out. And we see a lot of I talked about this with biology and having females as daughters. You see a lot of guys inadvertently having 4 daughters, and then that's it. Their genetics dies out after those 4 daughters, and they don't even know it. So we lost misanthropic altruist there, and in our conversation. I don't know if he'll come back, but I think we hit on a lot of things today, and I think that sometimes we hit on these really uncomfortable truths, and those uncomfortable truths it's going to cause you to have thought about things, and it's alarming. And those uncomfortable truths that we're going to have to accept them. And you still with us?
Yep. Hear me?
Yeah, you dropped out there for a second. This is Unforgiving, isn't it?
It is. Don't hit the X in the wrong place. God damn.
Yeah, don't hit that X in the wrong place. But the good thing
it's like being with a woman. God damn it.
As long as I'm mindful and noticing, like, I could bring you back in real quick. But if I'm on the other page or something, or else I'm looking something up or doing, and trying to talk at the same time, I might not notice that.
This is too much technology for people over 40. It just shouldn't be allowed. Yeah, fuck this.
This is a good program. I like this program because I could do this, and it cost me $25 a month, and that was
right, change your shit. Change the whole background magically. Let's see how.
Okay.
Change it to blue, the ocean, whatever.
With that, I can go with this one, or I can go to my settings. I can go to my green screen. I can we can put us in the woods, or we can put us in a city, or I could put myself in a philosophical argument. Imagine yourself happy with Sisyphus.
No, keep that one. I like that. So here's the deal, Joe. I don't know, like, I know we've talked about this subject, but I don't know your concrete answer. Do you believe happiness is achievable?
I think it's a mindful act, and then you have to decide, like a Mgtow would, what makes me unhappy? What are these things that I'm unwilling to do in my life? What suffrage am I unwilling to do in my life now? You ask yourself that question all the time. Am I willing to suffer for the female? Am I willing to suffer for my society? And as I cut those things out and kind of figure out spots where I can work within society on those things, and I'm not the guy that rolls the boulder up the hill anymore. What I say to myself with happiness is what makes me happy around here. I take the Mgtow approach to that, like my coffee, and it's like, if I was a traditionalist and living in that tradition, would I have that ability to do that? So that's a plus. And then there's a whole million things of pluses in my life now, from what I hang on my walls to when I take my bike ride. And one of the first things I lost when I was I don't think I've ever talked about these guys. At one time in my life, I was a bicyclist. I was almost a world-class road racer. I could do 35 miles an hour on my bike. But when I got married, it was one of those things that was competing with that. But that's one of the ultimate things in my life that really made me happy. I was 180 pounds. I was solid muscle. I could ride that bike 35 miles an hour for 10 hours straight.
So, but did that distract from production when you're not working?
When I'm not doing that, there's no other use.
Like, did it distract from production for her?
She needed to make that end, and I could no longer go out on that, and because I wasn't being useful to society when I was doing that.
This is so fucking weird. So, like, how do I?
But that made me happy. But that was the original question. What made me happy at that time? I'm like, I get on that bike now, and I'm like one of those Down syndrome kids that have a smile from ear to ear.
It should be that way.
Yeah, nothing makes me happier than being on that bike, and it's always been that way all my life. Yeah.
But here's the deal: the reverse is. So let's look at the female perspective of what you just said. Do you know what she sacrificed when she said, "Hey, I don't want you doing this," or "It's dangerous," or "It's taken away from the time from the family"? Do you know what she was sacrificing? She was from all those emotes.
Her opinion, her time with me. She was getting.
No, she was sacrificing being with a perceivably better male.
Yeah.
Than you. Like, you're doing all this extra stuff, but I could be with somebody who's more focused on providing more to me and my family, whoever, right? Like, I guess we'll give the female that. Sometimes they will. Here's the deal: it's not a guarantee, but sometimes they'll, tag in kids,
right,
with their needs. Not always, and this is interesting because I don't know if that's modern or not. But like from what we can garner from history, females and children were always tacked onto each other. Maybe that's our fucking misogynistic viewpoint, or maybe it's a maternalistic thing. I don't know. But like now, it's a burden. Like, how dare you make me deal with the kids more and you do your own thing? Like, that is a fucking phenomenon in all relationships right now.
That was perceived as me being I remember this argument clearly because I wanted to take a road trip out to Pennsylvania on my bike, and it would have been like 3, 4, 5 days or something. If I do 35 miles an hour, I could do 100 and some miles a day, and then come back. And the argument played out, and then I came home one day from work, and my bike was, and then I had to deal with that situation. Like, you're not allowed to do that. You can go fishing. She was giving me the alternate, like, you can go fishing, but as long as you come back within 4 hours or something, like, you can still work on the house, give me my attention that I deserve. But I could never get away and actually do that 2,300 mile. I would have loved to do the Adirondacks. I think they call it the Adirondacks, 2,400 mile race. That was in my DNA. That was my happiness. That was my joy. I mean, I should have did that in my life. At this late.
No, I get it. So like I had the exact same thing. So Joe, when you were late 30s, no, not even that, like mid 30s.
Mid 30s.
Who was your favorite artist that like you grew up listening to? As far as music,
musical artist, or
yeah.
Oh, when I was 32, probably Roxy Music.
Okay, so let's pretend Roxy found a way to reach out to you and say, "Hey, random fucking Joe.
Yeah, random guy.
I need you to meet me in a certain place at a certain time."
Yeah.
And you're married to a woman that says, "Hell fucking no. You can't meet that motherfucker. Yeah. If you do, it's going to compromise everything about us." I'm like, bitch, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm crazy. Shut the fuck up. You ain't meeting them. Like that happened to me. Like a life-changing event could have happened. Like if I just had that meeting. Here's the deal. Yeah. You have to do something to be noticed by certain people. And I'm not saying celebrity is justified. I'm not saying any of that. I think celebrity is retarded. However, I got noticed by certain people. Yeah. But this bitch is like, you know what? Fuck all your hard work, doing the local grind and all this shit. You don't get to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you for real? And, like when I got deep down into it, because you have to probe, right? Why is it? Because you might meet a bitch and you'll fuck her and you won't like me no more.
Yeah, you might meet
really.
And
you're willing to destroy my life and yours, by the way, because you're still with me. On the off chance I'm going to randomly fuck somebody in another place. Are you fucking crazy?
Yeah. There were a lot of in my relationship. I gave up a lot of those things. It was just not this one thing. I used that as an example. I got a scholarship from Boca Raton, the University of Boca Raton, that was given to me by the Army, and I could have went to Boca Raton, went to school, completed my 4-year degree at that point for free. Because the colonels had pushed it through because they wanted me around, and I would have been closer and stuff. She said, "No, you can't do that. There's no going to Florida." And it's like, so that was an opportunity missed. And then I ended up being an oil worker. We weigh that one up, just so I can be close to home and be the father.
Yeah. Is that the same one that fucked you over later?
Yeah, it's the same one that I gave.
That's nice. That's cute. Like, what the fuck?
And then at the end, she was like, "Aha, it was a lie. I got you good." She'll always remind me of those things that she gave up to, and like you said, there's a give and take in them roles. I took on that role, so my responsibility was to stay around. She took on that role. Her responsibility was to have children and do that. But she'll say, "Well, you didn't let me go to college either." She had an opportunity to go to Italy and go to college.
No, I think our first pathology that's denied to us as men is how to choose women in the first place. So here's the deal. There's a lot to say. And in fact, there's a growing industry about narcissism.
Yeah.
Right? If you look online or whatever. And this is not from confirmed fucking sources. But online, YouTube, whatever, women are fucking, oh my God, the fucking demographics are jumping off the point. Women are clamoring to the idea that every man they chose was like this master fucking narcissist.
Yeah.
And they had no fucking clue what was going on when they picked him.
Right. Yeah. Like, oh, I didn't.
And so that's a subject in and of itself. However,
you know what gets me?
We do know that like fucking borderline women, which is really common, by the way.
Yeah.
pretend these things and reinvent like entire relationships. Like, well, they can meet like a really boring dude. Like, oh, he was boring. He didn't really do shit. He didn't say shit. She can turn that into like, this motherfucker whirlwinded my whole life with his like epic words of deceit and betrayal. Like,
well, yeah, that's negative final fictionalism. They do a negative sort of final fictionalism where they can do that. We do final fictionalism too. We thought that we were gonna. This was the fictional idea in our head was that this family situation was going to be so perfect. Now, after in the temporal situation, when she exits, she does that same final fictionalism that, oh, he was so bad. But in the beginning, he was so good. He was everything I wanted, and he was perfect. And do you see how that flip flops? And it's like how they can convince themselves that he was a rapist, he was bad, he was always so narcissistic. But
it's dangerous, though. I mean,
do that. You bought into it. We bought into that because I had this finalized fictionalism in my head that, oh, she's going to come out with the white picket fence, and I'm going to come home from work, and she's going to be like, I'm so happy to see you. It's been 8 hours since you've been here. Just give me a hug. You know, it's like she got an apple pie made for me, and she's got that, and the kids run out and they give me that hug, and it's like, oh, we're so glad you're home, Dad. It's like the life is not the same with it.
Real life.
Boom.
A real life person.
Yeah.
Not a caricature of a human being, but a real life person. Somebody you have to walk around in real life, deal with real life, and then came home to us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense why people would like dads. But I mean,
I always say I had to live 2 lives back then. I go after this work life, and every day I had to change my psyche and go after this work life and be that guy where I suffered. And then I came home, and then I had to change my psyche and I had to be that father, and I had to be that. And that's a hard thing to do. And then somewhere between, I got those hours like riding my bike where I could just be me and be happy, imagine myself happy. And I was Sisyphus, and I was rolling, and then like in the dichotomy of my brain, I was holding on to those ideas as the same, and that's cognitive dissonance. But for those moments, those rare moments in my life, I could imagine myself happy when I'm a retard riding that bike, like, and it's like, God, this is so great. This is always, you live several different lives in those masks that we wear. That was the hard part. And even for me, when I go off to, several situations and in my career in the Army and the contractors, it's like I come home and I was like getting ready to go camping. And then it's like, ding-a-ling-a-ling, Joe, we got to go out. We got to fly out tonight out of Wright-Patterson. Everything goes on hold. I have to become that other person. I have to become that. Right away, I have to become that killer that I am the guy that's going to bring the fucking hammer. And then I come home and nobody knows. And then I have to become that husband again and then become that work. That was so hard for me to go back to work and not talk about it. It's like, you know what I just seen? That was 2 days ago.
But we're supposed to pull that off. Here's the deal. Boom. Historically, we pull that off.
Yeah, effortlessly. I did it too, effortlessly. Boom, I'm back. I'm that guy that can put everything away and become these 4 figures. And then I wonder why later in my life I cracked.
That's too deep.
That's deep. That's every male nowadays. Every male that if you do it the way they want you to do it, you're going to have to take on 2 personalities. And then that third,
3 or 4, yeah.
Maybe there's a 4th personality that you're going to have to take on if you get another business or something. You have to be that guy too. You're dealing with 4 separate personalities.
But here's the deal: like the first the callback to that, the clap back, as they say with the kids these days.
Yeah, the kids now.
It is, yeah, you do. That's part of life. You have to be a different person with all kind of different people, always, and that's part of life. You never. Here's the deal: if you want to be yourself, it's a sliver in your life, and for you to ask for more makes you an asshole.
It makes you, yeah, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Back to the original. If you don't do this, you're just gonna burn in a sea of that's such a cruel statement. Me and Joey talk about that. It's like saying that to another human being. That's such a cruel statement, and that casual cruelty is intended. It has intentions, and it has malintentions to it. But I bought into that. I didn't know better. There was no Mgtows out here. There's no Mgtows for you either to talk to you. Thank God, you got it a little earlier. But there's no Mgtows out there. I didn't have that philosopher in my life like Camus to explain things to me. Nobody had it. None of us really. And then the government's lying to you. The social things lying to you. The teachers are lying to you. Everybody wants you to just be productive. That's when, I don't know. Why do people rebel? Yeah. What sort of rebellion are you in now, right about now? Misanthropic?
Let's see.
You and that?
I'm a prepper.
Yeah.
So, when people first got to know me, I was not a prepper. I'm a prepper now.
Now you're a prepper. You're waiting.
I'm close to psycho level prepper. Not quite there, but I'm a prepper.
It's fun. Prepping's a unique thing. It's a hobby more than anything, isn't it?
And I know the psychology behind it. Here's the deal. If I have a whole bunch of extra shit, do I feel better? Yes. Yes, I feel better. And if things never happen, I have extra shit. If things do happen,
I have extra shit.
I'm going to survive just a little tiny bit longer than y'all.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, it's such a simple fucking thing. And guess what? All you're doing is spending a little extra money a week. Think about how much you spend in groceries a week. And then I figured out so I was looking at the costs. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense not to prep. If you have that kind of income, I guess. Some people don't. They live check to check and have nothing extra.
Or person that makes under $24,000 a year,
But even then, they can do something.
They can do something. But
because I'm sort of poor. I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of poor, and not being able to do it. And I'm always looking to cut corners. I'm fucking frugal as shit.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna this whatever. So the way I've built up my prep has been very frugal, and but it's possible. I'm not lacking on bills. I'm not worried about fucking bills or anything like that. But I'm still prepping. So and I'm not prepping. Here's the deal. So Corona hit, and things like Corona shouldn't fucking be the reason why you prep. It should be a validation as to why it is.
It's a validation.
So because you should never trust the media that much, whether it's true or false. So
yeah. So your rebellion to this world is sort of there's an action in it. It's not a.
No, I mean, all right, let's get deep. My rebellion is that I will survive, and I would hopefully survive among most that did not survive, and then I write.
Yeah.
No, here's the deal.
Yeah.
This is a caveat. Then I write.
So
I've been a writer my whole life in various whatever.
There you go.
But when everybody else is starting to die, then I write.
Yeah, you're artistic. You have an artistic sense. So art is your rebellion right now.
I don't like to call it art. Writing is not art.
Yeah, sure it is.
In my opinion.
It's it's a form of art. Linguistics is your rebellion. Let's call it that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good final stage right there, and it means you're in a good place.
And I'm not worried. Here's the deal: like potentially, coronavirus is going to take over everything. We're all fucked. I'm okay. I don't feel bad. Like, I mean, I'm a little bit prepared, but I'm probably ill-equipped too. Like, if you're gonna get it, you're gonna get it. You're gonna fucking die. You're gonna die. Like, what the fuck are you gonna do to me? You're not gonna do anything to me that like I'm fucking surprised by.
Yeah, coronavirus.
Here's the deal: from the moment I like was born, actually that's not fair. From the moment I was like 6 or 7 years old, I realized that I'm gonna die.
Yeah,
I didn't like it when I was 6 or 7 years old, but like.
Yeah, that's the absurdity.
You know, 30 years later, I'm okay with the idea. Like, yeah, it's gonna happen.
Idea now, yeah. Well, that shows your maturity and everything. The ultimate absurdity in life is that you live, you die, you suffer, or you live, you suffer, and then you die. That's an absurd life. That's what Camus was saying.
Do you know what? Like the worst moments that I can count right now is like the moments of non-suffering.
Yeah.
The moments of boredom where like nothing was happening.
Nothing was happening. Well, that's freedom. Freedom is good.
And also, I'll grant it to like the fucking left, like the crazy people on the left. Like, you know what? That was privilege, I guess. So when I was so bored and wanting to kill myself out of boredom, that was fucking privilege. You know what? I can actually grant that to the crazy people on the left.
Yeah.
Because I think it is a form of privilege to have so much luxury where you're not suffering war, starvation, whatever. Yeah, they got it. Guess what? They never talk about this actual fact.
Yeah.
But that's a privilege to not actually suffer yet want to die or kill yourself or just be so bored because you have no purpose, you want to go out. This is an interesting idea, like, and that's the idea we should be talking about, but we talk about privilege on the social.
Yeah, privilege is, contentment with life. You're so privileged that you're content with life. I think with the privilege that they talk about is the over privilege. Like, I live in a mansion, I own 3 mansions. It's like I only need one, but I have one.
I thought it was not starving, not being blasted on by bullets in a war. I thought that's what was privilege.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a society now where I feel totally safe when I turn off the lights at night, and it's like no one's going to come and try to rape me.
I mean, if you prepare for bad times, does that make you more privileged? Like,
no, I don't think that makes you more privileged.
Yeah, like this is what the problem with the privilege game is. Like, I don't think there's really rules to it.
Yeah, there's really no rules in it. I've often meant to kind of break down those statements that they say, like I did with the misogyny statement. It's like, is misogyny a real thing? It's like somebody's opinion. An opinion is always intuitive. You're having an intuitive feeling that someone's is misogynistic. That's not a valid thing. It's an opinion.
I've never in my whole existence, like my whole life, I've never met anybody who actually hates women. Not a single person.
So there's the hyperbole in that, how they make it more than it is. So is privilege that same? What is privilege? It's I haven't done the actual linguistical thing on it. What is this privilege that we talk about? Someone's opinion of your privilege would be someone else's opinion of you having extending circumstances where you're not suffering as much as the rest of the people. Oops, I got you back in. Yeah, so privilege would be not suffering like everybody else. But shouldn't we look at that differently? Like, privilege should be so everybody should be privileged. Everybody should not suffer. So we look at it when you look at it from the feminist point of view, privilege is you have the privilege not to suffer like the rest of us. Like, you want to throw suffering on that.
So, and I look at it completely differently. I'm like, suffering is a given, and
Yeah.
it's not
If you,
necessarily bad.
if you consider yourself
It's a
Sisyphus, yeah.
stepping stone to growth. It's, in fact, maybe the only way we can grow and evolve within our lifetime.
Right.
Right. So, like, if evolution takes fucking
And there should be,
decades, millennia
yeah.
to occur, within our lifetime, we have to approach suffering and obstacles as a way to go, as our own form of personal evolution. That's the way I see it.
But
Here's
what-
the deal. Like,
after you
so
overcome
far,
those obstacles,
I'm not succeeding, but I'm trying. So,
yeah, after you overcome those obstacles, you've got everything set up. You're like, okay, I'm by my cabin in the woods by the lake, and you're throwing your fishing rod out, and you're just laying there on your cot, and it's like someone comes up and he goes, "He's so privileged."
no, that's
No.
bullshit.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
No, he do that, like, especially the fact that he's out of society.
Right.
He's not bothering
Well,
none of you
the millennials,
motherfuckers no more.
that's what the millennials do to the aged. It's like after we've worked 30, 40 years in a society, we're sitting by our cot and you're looking at the boomers and going, oh, you guys are so privileged. You guys stole from us. They're doing that same thing to the...
And they keep redefining who a boomer is.
Yeah.
Like, where they were born and what they did. Like, it's fucking retarded.
Yeah, it's like... it's a ridiculous thing, and it's like, okay, now if you conduct your life in a civil manner, save for your retirement, pay into Social Security, you'll be the same kind of privileged, and everybody will. No one gets excluded that pays in, and it isn't. Yeah, so we answer a question in that.
I mean, as far as privilege, there's already a degree of that. So, like, if you want to say, hey, you're privileged to be born in the Western world, and especially in the U.S., and especially in a certain state, yeah, you're fucking right. You are, like,
Yeah,
I don't know, like, lucky is a better word, but, like, whatever, if you want to use the word privilege.
Yeah, luck plays a lot into that. The lottery of birth plays a lot into that. The lottery of society. Was I at that right point at that right time where the guy was like, I need this guy to come in here and do this, and you were there, and he goes, oh God, thank you, do this, and then he says, I'm going to pay you this amount, and you go, bing, I'm in it. Or am I to that group?
I mean, all right. So let's pretend you were born in a situation where, like, you were called a white devil, a white hunky. You got beat up because you were white your whole life. I mean, we all know. Actually, it's not that uncommon, but it is a little bit peculiar.
Yeah.
But we totally accept the fact of the opposite. Like, oh, you were born black and born in a white neighborhood, and you always got. Here's the deal: anybody I met that was black, that was born in the suburbs,
okay,
cool. They didn't get beat up. They were not called bad names every day.
Yeah,
they were a fucking exotic luxury. They got laid because they were different.
Yeah,
like, for no other reason.
Yeah, things
like it was not a big deal. So, like, the racism shit for them was different. But however, white dudes being born in all non-white areas, different. And maybe it should be. Like, maybe they deserved being a couple licks because of historical oppression. Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where society should be, where random fucking boys get punched because of historical shit. That's progression. So.
Yeah. Now I look at Mayor Pete was talking about this the other day. Mayor Pete, I just revere because he's so smart. And but he was talking about we're making opportunities in black neighborhoods and South Bend there to further. And what he's saying about in that is, okay, you're around people like yourself, so we're making an opportunities for you to go around a person like yourself, and then he'll hire you into a person based on what? Your skin color, you're like them. So that's where that nationalism should be. That's where there's a good sort of, and I don't know if it's a good sort of national. If I'm around a lot of Irish people and I go into and then the Irish guy goes, hey, you're Irish, I'm Irish. you should come work for me, and I take care of you because you're in the same club as me, and we just feel good being around each other. We click. So what's the difference between that and what they're saying down there in South Bend? That's supposed to be like, we're going to give opportunities for black businessmen to hire black other men. So that's the same.
What it comes down to is meritocracy. So here's the deal. Like, so even when things were fucking racist, as hell, there was still a sense of meritocracy. So here's the deal. And also compared to nepotism. Did some people hire their family and their friends? Absolutely.
And friends.
Happen all the fucking time amongst all races. It's happening right now in Africa. Somewhere in Africa, somebody just hired somebody that looked like, because he was a cousin or something. So let's not pretend this is a racial issue.
Right.
Next, as far as like meritocracy, should I hire a black dude just because he's black? No, you shouldn't. It's retarded. And even a black dude, if you're honest, would tell you, don't do that. Don't hire a motherfucker based on being black.
Yeah,
but we're trying to be led into like that should be the new thing. You hire people based on the color and not performance.
Yeah.
If this is the truth, we're going down in flames. Like, period.
Yeah. Now, if you can see both sides of the argument, like, why do English people hire English people? Why do Irish people like to hire? Because it's wrong. Why do Italians? My friend Joey says he feels comfortable.
But America's different. America has been, how many fucking years do we have of being the melting pot? Like, here's the deal. Like, you could be a brother and show up, and as long as you're not fucking corny, like even if you're like, it's a down fucking dirty job, like you're fucking sucking out sewage shit, right? Yeah. If you're at that level of job and you're trying, it's good money, by the way. This is fucked up. It's good money.
Yeah, that is good money.
It's probably better than most of us make. If you're willing to suck sewage but make good money, and somebody says, "Oh my God," and says some offhand racial joke, if you're not of the mind to get that, you're an asshole. And also, if you're not of the mind to give it back, that's what they're looking for. Your fucking coworkers are looking for you to be strong enough to say, like, "Oh, really, honky?" That's what they want. They're not going to be offended, like, "Oh shit, he said some anti-white shit." No, they want the camaraderie.
They want the camaraderie in that business, yeah.
Exactly, and all you got to do is be like Patrice O'Neill. Just talk shit to white people, and they'll talk shit to you. Everybody's open and front with the shit. But guess what? You're going to end up going out to dinner with your family with this guy. You're going to love him. It's going to be all good. So,
yeah.
It's fucking retarded, man. Like, there is no real racial divide in this country unless somebody wants to create one.
Unless somebody creates the racial divide. And, yeah, we've seen that with segregation in the 70s there. With you started, doing these movements, you're hurting the kids to have that social justice thing take place. And then there was fights in the schools, there was violence that arose from that. So it had a negative consequence. And really the kids just wanted to be around kids like themselves. And that's not just white kids, that's black kids too. Black kids want to be around people like themselves. They feel more comfortable. They work better together. They think alike. They educate each other. And so that's a good form of tribalism. That's a good form of naturalism where you do those things within your communities and everybody can say to everybody else, like, yeah, that's cool for you too. But often you look out into the white community and it's like, nice, it's like, okay, them suburbs are nice there. And then they go, oh, well, we're invited into that.
But that's not an honest evaluation of white suburbia, because like the white suburbia, here's the deal. Like, as far as like the adults operating and going to work, yeah, that's pretty fucking standard.
Yeah.
But because they do that so much, their kids are all kind of fucked up. They've been fucked up for 50 years. Like, I mean, if you look at white suburbia and the kids they produce, they're all fucked up. Well, they had fucked up childhood.
Gee,
because most of them were divorced, and that says something about lack of fathers.
that assist.
Most of them, you know, it's all fucked up. And here's the deal: like everybody knows this, but we want to pretend like
Right.
this is still the way to go, and this is not the way to go.
Those communities, as a white kid that was raised in one of those communities, I looked at a community yesterday or last podcast, and it was the one I talk across the river here. It's a good community. It's one of the best in the United States.
What does that mean though, to be good? Are they like married families and shit?
Yeah, financially married families. The community has a large income. The average house is $300,000 in this area, which is unfounded. The average person doesn't do manufacturing work. They do upper management work. That community is very large. But when I looked at one glaring statistic in that community was 34% of the people that fell under poverty in that community were white males.
They lived in the basement of the good people. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So was that community good for their offspring? Because these males, these kids, the new millennials, they can never aspire to be what their fathers were. They're going to be something different. And then that community didn't provide what they needed to provide for his difference. They provided for that same kind of person that holds up that community. But you're not going to work for the Cleveland Browns. You're not going to be that number one company owner. You're not going to be that guy that the billionaire needs to run this company over here, and then there's 70 of you, and it's like you do that very well. Your kid's not going to be that. He's going to be something different. So in that situation, now we have a 34% is a big statistic too, of young people that can never aspire to be in that community. Now they're going to get exiled or ostracized to a different community, which is probably my community, where they can develop skills and they're going to get dumped on us. And I've seen that.
No, what should happen is presented the alternative, which is like fucking technical, vocational skill sets.
Yeah, suburban dumping.
And that's not given. Here's the deal: that's not given ladder high schoolers, which is a fucking crime. Like, it should be presented as an alternative. And here's the deal: you know why it isn't? Because it's called alternative. That's the first problem.
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh, hey,
label.
Do you want to make a lot of money a year and never worry about being in poverty because of this one skill set?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Like, hey, you want to become a welder and never worry about being poor?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
like, it should be presented that way. Like, welder, electrician, carpenter, like shit that's always localized that can never be like put off to another country. Like, you cannot do that shit in other countries. Like,
is that ideal community to build? Well, if you look at it now, but in time, that's going to be not the ideal community. It's every community goes through that with as they age, you start seeing the cracks break, and okay, where's the next community going to be? They're going to gentrify this area over here, and then all the rich people are going to live there. But that's not generally ideal for their kids, and so we see a lot of that.
So it's bad to go into trade? Like, I don't know what you mean right now.
No, I'm saying that it doesn't leave freedoms for artistic expression. It doesn't leave freedoms for what you're going to be in life. It's the same thing. And I would, you're going to be this, Joe. And
so
you're going to be unhappy.
I'm dealing with this with my daughter, right? So what's your opinion of letting a person struggle to find the creative? Here's the deal, because like the creative person, right now has no struggle. Like they're given way too many advantages just to be them and create.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was all disadvantage, and unfairly so, right? To try to come up and create. So right now, like there's a fucking weird, we have no balance. There's no way to like
Well,
we put them in just because they're creative. We keep them out. It's stupid. So what's your suggestion of balance?
Suggestion, I don't know, because I never got the answer to that question because of the baby mama thing, because I was discarded. How could I ever answer that question? What would I do best for my kids? I would support their creative, what they wanted to do. I would support everything in what they want to do. This is idealism in me that say I would support everything they wanted if I had that chance, but I didn't have that chance.
No,
and
I get it.
That's where these things that we do now in the baby mama culture is going to they put a certain you want these good fathers, you want these guys that will support the kids and let those creative things come out, where Susie likes to build candles, so she makes a candle business, and all of a sudden she got the biggest candle business in America because you went out and you bought the wax, you showed her how to do it, or she wants to make soap, or she wants to be an artist, or she wants all those things. There's a million different things she can choose to be in her life, but there's going to have to be someone that cultivates that.
You're right.
Now, is that going to be fathers? Probably not, because 70%.
No, it should be. Like, it probably won't be, but it should be.
Yeah. So if you got that, are you going to cultivate those kids? You better, the country says, well, we'll force him to cultivate those kids by monetary funds, and then the mama spends all that on crack, and then and then nothing ever grows onto the kids. It never gets cultivated, and then we have this thing cracks.
Actually, I could fuck up your whole thing right now. So, in your same narrative, what could happen is that mom was a crack fiend, and dad was always there, and he guided her to success, and she blew the fuck up, and she thanks everybody and God except him at the awards ceremony, and she especially thanks her crack mama for going through all those struggles and teaching her things that, whatever.
Oh, we see that.
Because of the bias. Here's the deal, like she secretly hates her mama for not being around.
Yeah.
But publicly, she loves her mama for not being around.
Yeah. My grandmother, she was there for me, and Jesus. It's like we attribute to those ideas, that are, nice to say on TV. Like,
and it's funny because regardless of those ideas, a dad is going to push his child towards success in his power, and his skill set and his talents. He'll do whatever the fuck he can.
Knowledge he can with that kid. Every time he asks a question, he's going to give him the best answer he can.
And if it backfires, it backfires. Like, if he doesn't get anything from it, he'll still be like, okay, I'm good as long as she's happy.
Yeah, as long as she's happy. Now
that's how we're fucking wired, dude. Here's the deal. Everybody keeps underestimating how we're fucking wired as men.
Yeah.
To please women. Like we are fundamentally wired to protect and provide for women. Like, there's no escaping it. Even if you're a deep thinker kind of dude, like even you, Joe, as a dad, you're a dad.
Yeah.
Like tomorrow, if your daughter came to you and you knew she fucked up, made a bad decision, she's like, Dad, I just need a little bit of help. Are you just gonna Mgtow say, no, bitch, you can't have help? No, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna hear a story, hear it out, and you're eventually probably gonna help her in some way.
Yeah, in some way.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
resources. She needs a room. There's a room right there. Rent free. Let's fix your life. Let's take care of these things. Yeah.
But that makes you a simp to some Mgtow circles, I would suppose.
Well, that's what that.
That's Joe. You're not Mgtow enough unless you cut off all bitches, including your daughter. Like, what the fuck?
Casual cruelty that's crept in, and I was expected to. That's why I severed the group. That's why I there was this profound thing that happened to me where, all my life I wasn't allowed to experience that empathy. And then the last few years, the last 4 or 5 years, I wanted so badly to shred all that casual cruelty where I had to be cruel to certain people, and I had to be cruel. I had to argue with the feminists. The incels were my enemy. And people were throwing that on me. That's that same indoctrination that we were talking about today. They come in, if you don't do this, we're going to ostracize you from the group. And then I went through that where I was ostracized there for a while. But in that process, I become a better person. I become this less casual, cruel person. I have empathy for everybody now. And it's like, yeah, I needed to learn. And on this late date in my life, I needed to learn that too. But Mgtow taught me that too, but it didn't come easy.
It shouldn't. Nothing worthwhile comes easy. Isn't that a platitude somewhere?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I could have did better things if I had a better mentor figure, if I had, someone to guide me through my Mgtow journey here. And, I wouldn't have said certain things, or I wouldn't have been cruel to that guy. But there are still things that I would have still did the same.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you have the best, you would still found your own follies.
Yeah, you asked me about what I'm doing with that. I would still tell that same person that same answer, because he was wrong, not me. And, there's things I would still do, but that's life. Sometimes you're gonna get a life is entropy. It's gonna come in certain ways, and I can never predict those things. But I think I'm a better person for it. At least I grew with it.
I think that's the only reason to live.
Yeah, meaning.
It's because, here's the deal. When you get into like these rhythms of life, like once you fall into the rhythm and it goes like dun dun dun, dun, dun. Things get boring and meaningless. And then life has a way to say, hey, boom, slaps you in the face. Fuck your rhythm. Fuck your meaning. I have a new problem to present to you. How are you going to deal with it? And like humans are so fucking arrogant. Well, I have a philosophy to deal with it. Nope. Your philosophy won't work right here because I fucked it all up.
Yeah, it's off the
And you're like, well, I don't know how to deal with this. Exactly. You don't know how to deal with this. Live in that. Don't know how to deal with this shit and deal with it. That's what fucking real philosophy is. Don't know how to deal with it, but live with it.
You should be. Yeah, your philosophy should be tenable, where you say, okay, this didn't work. What do I have to do? And then you got tools that you can apply, and then it will lessen the growing period. It will lessen the stress. And it's like, and if you apply them right, you'll get out faster. Things will move along better. But having the lack of any kind of successful philosophy, it's gonna take you longer, because you're gonna have to learn that whole thing. And then sometimes it's just gonna end, and you're gonna think, oh well, I made it through that. It's like, this too shall pass. I hear people say that all the time. That's such a cop-out. This too shall pass. You just waited for it at the end. You had no tools to deal with it while it was happening.
Yeah, you need to absorb what's happening.
Yeah, you need to have some tools, and make a lot of tools to navigate those. You're running around obstacles. You're like, woo, missed that one. Oh, it's like, yeah.
But like, like the bro actually believes that. Like the bro's like, well, I'm just a bro. Nothing's gonna happen to me.
Oh yeah, something's gonna happen sooner or later.
and the bro is a huge amount of the new, not Mgtow, but like at least manosphere flanks. Like that's the bro. Like somehow we attracted the bro.
Yeah.
The unthinking. Here's the deal. Like like the nerds,
the college,
and like the geeks and the philosopher, like the fucking born philosophers, which I do think there are some people like that.
Yeah.
And a whole swath of other kind of people.
Yeah.
Are on the fringes, and they may gravitate towards something like us, you may tell. But no, we got mostly bros.
We got the bro culture. We got the woo, college
or incels that refuse to be incel. and want to be Mgtow. And I think that's a good deal. Like, your only salvation is Mgtow.
You're only
So like, hey, but on the same point, don't be an asshole about it. Like, and we do have that. We have like fucking incel, like Mgtow incels that are like, fuck bitches. Bitches are inherently evil. They got the worst of our points.
Yeah,
because some of these things came out of our mouths within context,
right?
But they just jumbled the shit up. Like, bitches are evil forever and always, and they should never get to vote. And fuck bitches, because I can't fuck them. Like, what the fuck?
That's yeah. By the way, we're trying to keep it scientific and not get kicked off the air here. Yeah, you got to word that a little different. But yeah, and as an educational tool, yeah, there's a group of people that think like that and are very misogynistic, and they don't belong in Mgtow because they're never going to grow. Stay in the men rights unit, and we have so many different segments of group that they become the happy misogynists. And it's like you're stuck. You're stuck. That's all I can say to them until they come in.
Well, let's talk about that. The happy. What is it? The happy misogynist.
Yes, that Paul Elam thing where he's going to embrace his misogyny.
I don't know what that means. So like, if you embrace the Mgtow worldview, and here's your deal. There's a grief that, like, oh shit, women are not what I thought they were, indoctrinated. There should definitely be that point, like, we're like, oh my god. And I don't know what to tell you in the middle. But when you realize that women are human beings and all human beings are flawed, that's Mgtow. To me, it is Mgtow.
Them, and for everything they go through, you're going to go through, and they have to understand for everything they're going through, you're going through too.
And interestingly enough, and I don't know if it's a bias and internal fucking the way we're wired. Once we realize that women are fucking, human, we start to look at men differently too in our own behavior. Like, oh, I'm a fucking simp. I've acted on my own fucking behavior, which was, charged by hormones or charged by sexuality in a certain way.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I thought I was an individual. I wasn't so much.
Yeah.
So how do I, ascend to who I really am? All this shit kind of comes in your head.
Yeah.
Hopefully in Mgtow.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we try to, but there's a lot of bad messages out there right now in Mgtow, and we have to deal with that. But there's the old, well, you have to let him do his unique kind of Mgtow, and it's like, we have to give those people the chance to grow. But if they're not doing it right at all, like, then and they're actually hurting men. That's when we got to start questioning it. But that's what I do every day here. Every time I come on, I pick something that's wrong with what I see in Mgtow. I give a philosophical answer for the question. I show 3 points at least of why scientifically this is right, and then I leave it up to the individuals to interpret. And will they interpret it correctly? Most of the time, no. No. But if they look back in 10 years, they might go, oh, Joe he was right. He was so right about that. And we've been 3 hours and 33 minutes, and I'm getting tired. My butt hurts from sitting. And my ears hurt from these things. I have to get better ones. I think I'm going to turn this thing off.
All right.
Yeah. So we worked around that came back to it, worked around it, came back to it quite a few times there, didn't we?
Yeah, no. I derailed it a little bit. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, because a lot of times when you derail it and then you come back to it, you go, oh yeah, that's still the same thing. But it's still, in the as long as we stay on the field and we talk about the Mgtow, why that idea is in Mgtow. As long as we come back to it and we work our way back eventually, there's a lot of steps sometimes to come back to the idea. But I think we did a good job, and I wanted to thank each and every one of these guys for showing up, and listening and doing their part in Mgtow. I mean, it's up to us to you just get out there and do your part and affect one guy, and that guy will affect another guy. You know how that works. It's the stream becomes a river, the river becomes a lake, the lake becomes an ocean, and sooner or later we will evolve as men into the kind of society we want, not the kind of society we're stuck with now. But that's going to take guys to have courage enough to do this, and I see that courage around Mgtow. I do, and I appreciate it. And with that, I just want to say thanks a lot for being Mgtow. Mgtow.